Timothy Ferguson, born August 6, 2006, in the state of Oklahoma. He was the child of Eric and Shanda Ferguson. Shanda's last name later changed to Vander Ark after she remarried. Early in his life, he's diagnosed with autism, ADHD, sensory processing disorder, and he has speech and motor function impairments. When he was very young, he required a surgery where tubes were placed into his ears to lessen the severity of sound coming in. His early life with Shanda and Eric was chaotic, and Shanda was said to have had many problems stemming from abuse when she was younger. Her father had sexually abused her up until she was 8 years old, and then, when her father was out of the picture, a new stepfather came along and continued the exact same abuse. Shanda would go into foster care with her sister, and things didn't get any better, her foster parents being very abusive, and she would suffer a range of cruel punishments. When Timothy was 2 years old, his parents divorced, and after a 4-year-long custody battle, Shanda's parental rights are terminated, seeing as she was classed as neglectful and unable to provide for the children. There were even allegations that she would bring pornography into the household to show the young children. Instead of acting as a mother, the eldest son, Nolan, was one of the main caretakers of the children. One of Timothy's siblings recalls that her mother would spend hours on the couch writing sex books, and then she would often show those books to them. Eric gained full custody of all the children, and Shanda was ordered to pay child support, only being allowed supervised visits of 3 hours per month. Whilst Timothy was in the care of his father, life wasn't easy for the young boy. There are multiple reports from different people in Timothy's school in Oklahoma. Teachers, psychologists, and school counselors. They had all noticed that this boy's home life wasn't by any means a shining example of functionality. His 6th grade special education teacher would say that she contacted DHS at one point because she would often have to shower the young boy and provide him with clean clothes when he came to school, something that he very much appreciated when she did so. On weekends, some teachers would fill his backpack with food because they were concerned about how well he was being fed at home. Another teacher would say that she noticed he was emotionally stunted as a result of lack of care. This teacher says she noticed Timothy was starving for attention and regularly wanted hugs. He was very eager to please. She also would notice that whenever he got into trouble at school, he would be very emotional once he realized that he was in the wrong, and then he would become apologetic. She believes that school was his safe place. Timothy's father and stepmother would say that he was a handful. He wouldn't follow instructions or house rules, and didn't understand why he couldn't do certain things. He would constantly eat more food than he was capable of handling, and when he made himself sick, he wouldn't understand why this happened. Furthermore, he would love taking things apart, toys, devices, anything he could get his hands on, and when he would be told that he can't do this, he would feel very confused why not. His father was said to not have played much of a role in Timothy's upbringing, seeing as the man was always at work, and so the raising of the child fell onto the stepmother's shoulders, a woman named Patricia. Patricia would say that although Timothy was high support needs, he was also high functioning. He could take care of himself, and he didn't really like being touched, talked to, and he hated loud noises. She would have to put a lock on his closet because he was particularly afraid of the bathroom, especially at night. Instead of using the restroom, he would go into his closet and urinate there. Although it is said that he was a difficult child at home, the adults looking after him at school would remember Tim differently. They would say that in school he was very cooperative and helpful. He did have issues where he would wet himself, but the school psychologists would say that they believe this was due to trauma. There were allegations that Paul, his older brother, was sexually abusing him, and as a result, Paul was never allowed near Timothy at school. They were always placed into separate buildings. The psychologist would say that although none of the children showed any signs of physical abuse from their parents, each and every child in this household was showing signs of mental trauma. Many of these adults involved in Timothy's education did reach out to DHS on a number of occasions to express their concerns. but the result was always the same. Nothing would come of the reports. Timothy's parents were contacted regarding the teacher's concerns, but it is reported that they would always provide excuses for the state of Timothy, such as, he went to bed clean and dirtied himself during the night. Then the boy would be adamant that he wanted to go to school dirty, so they would let him. One of his teachers says that Timothy very much understood that he wasn't cared for at home by the adults there, and that he felt as though he was a burden rather than a loved child. Most of his life, it appeared, that he was living through a lot of difficult emotions regarding home life. The school psychologist even said at one point that she believed Timothy was being over-medicated, and the boy expressed that he never wanted to be at home, because at home, he and the other kids were always locked in their bedrooms. As the years go on, Timothy is 15 years old, and his stepmother is finding it increasingly more and more difficult to care for him. She feels overwhelmed and depressed, and as a result, speaks to her husband Eric and asks him for assistance. Eric advises that they should put Timothy into foster care. At this point in time, Shanda, who was remarried to a man named Shanda Vander Ark, seemingly had found herself in a good place. Shanda had been married to Adam for 12 years after they met online, and initially the two lived together in Oklahoma before eventually settling in Michigan. In 2016, she enrolls into university for law studies and graduates with honors. She actually passed the bar exam, which is notoriously difficult, second in her class. She has another son with her new husband, Gabrielle, and things seem to be going well for her. Her son Paul, who was 18 at the time, had been kicked out of his father's house and went to live with Shanda. He had been there since May of 2020. Paul was doing well in this household, and as a result, his biological father Eric decides, instead of putting Timothy into foster care, he would ask Shanda to take the boy in. Despite not being allowed to have Timothy in her custody, Shanda agrees to take her son in because she didn't want him to go into the foster system. So Timothy, in May of 2021, goes to live with his mother in Michigan. Initially, everything was relatively okay with this living situation. Shanda Vander Ark would say that other than Timothy sneaking food at night that he wasn't supposed to have, occasional vocal arguments between Tim and Paul, and due to issues with Timothy wetting himself he had to wear an adult diaper, the boy was no problem at all. Adam says that for the most part, he was in charge of keeping the household clean and tidy, and overall everything was running smoothly. Paul, who turned 19, had a job as a dishwasher, while Timothy and 7-year-old Gabrielle were being homeschooled. The children all had bedrooms in the basement, and the adults lived upstairs. They recall that when Timothy came to live with them, he brought with him a very large bag that contained all of the medications he was supposed to be taking. Shanda claims that when the medications ran out, she was unable to get them renewed due to her not supposed to have custody of the boy, so she decided to leave him off the meds. This, according to Shanda, was a good thing, as the meds essentially zombified him, and once he was off them, she says that there was a noticeable positive change. Timothy was more lively, he put on more weight, and he seemed to be doing very well without them. It's not until January of 2022 where problems would begin. Adam suffers a stroke, and although he would survive, he can no longer navigate the stairs in his house, so he goes to live with his parents who are caring for him. This leaves 41-year-old Shanda in charge of the household, looking after her 3 children. During this time, she is employed as a clerk to a judge, and she's at work from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., whilst Paul works from 4 p.m. to 1 a.m. as a dishwasher. Paul has to step up and begins assisting with groceries and giving some of his income to Shanda. When Shanda is at work, he looks after the 2 children who are homeschooled, and then she takes care of them when Paul goes to work at night. Times were tough, and Shanda was struggling paycheck to paycheck to keep the house running. From an external view of the family though, they seemed to be making it. Gabrielle would regularly attend baseball games and have visits with his grandmother. Paul was working to support the family, helping the household. Shanda was working a difficult legal job and a second job on the side training service animals. and Timothy was being homeschooled, predominantly using an iPad to get the lessons. This brings us to the day, July 6th, 2022, around 6 months after Adam's stroke. A 911 call is placed, and a frantic Shanda begs for emergency services to come to her house, as she has discovered her son Timothy not breathing. When law enforcement and emergency services get to the house around 7 a.m., Shanda is attempting to perform CPR on Timothy, but it's too late. Rigor mortis had begun to set in, indicating that he passed away hours ago. Shanda is taken outside and questioned by the officer as to what happened. A key piece of information that will become relevant over the course of the footage you're about to watch is that the officer had immediately noticed that Timothy looked incredibly skinny. This leads the officer to become very concerned regarding his weight. Shanda's explanation for this is that Timothy had been on a hunger strike over the last 2 weeks, and she was having trouble getting him to eat, but she hadn't noticed how much weight he'd actually lost. According to Shanda, the situation with Timothy going on a hunger strike had happened once in the past in January of that year when Adam first had the stroke. Timothy at that time was refusing to eat for around 3 weeks before she could get control of the situation.
You have another son inside the house?
I do. Yeah.
Are they sleeping still right now?
One of them is, yeah. The 20-year-old's awake.
He's 20?
No, the 20-year-old's awake.
Okay.
He's been wearing really loose clothes the last couple of weeks.
He's really skinny.
He's really skinny, and I didn't notice till this morning because he wouldn't, I asked him if he's okay, and he would not answer me. He's 15. He's been...
He has autism?
Yeah.
Like a high functioning?
Yeah. I had no clue how bad it was. Oh my God. Like I said, he did this back in, my husband's stroke was January 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
So he did this back in, second week of January for almost 3 weeks. And then he ate something last night.
Now you said the last time you saw him was 5:30 this morning?
Yeah.
Did he say anything?
He had fallen out of bed.
At 5:30?
Yeah.
You sure it wasn't earlier?
I mean, it's possible. I thought it was 5:30, but I wasn't super awake. I heard a thump, and I came down, and he's kind of laying on his side, kind of like, what the heck? And I reached out. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Sorry. Oh my God. Oh my God. Yeah. And I reached out and he pulled himself up, and I asked him if he's okay, and I just asked if he hit his head. He said, no, I think I hit my knees on my chest. I think he couldn't tell me how he fell. Oh my God. No, I don't know what to do. Oh my God. He said it was okay. He's been wearing baggy. I mean, he was wearing a hoodie for crying out loud, and I just didn't. His face didn't look like that. What the heck? That's why I asked him to eat last night, because his face started looking a little. I'm like, okay, enough. And he wouldn't show. I'm like, let me see. Hold your shirt up. And he wouldn't hold his shirt up. He wouldn't do anything.
Did he get real skinny last time too?
Yes. The only reason I know is because my 7-year-old walked in on him accidentally when he was in the shower downstairs. And then my 7-year-old comes up and he's like, Mama, Timothy's really skinny. I was like, oh.
Was that this time or last time?
That was last time. That was like first week of February is when he discovered that. And I told him he was either going to start eating multiple times a day, or I was taking him to the hospital, and he didn't want to go to the hospital, so he ended up
eating on his own.
Yes. He moved up here with us last May because his dad couldn't handle him. And he's been great. I mean,
last May, as in May of last year or this year?
Yeah, May of last year.
Okay.
May of last year.
And he goes to school and everything, he was?
I've been homeschooling him online because it's high functioning. He's just done better at it. I tried to check it in the last few days, and he just wouldn't let me anywhere near him. He didn't want a kiss, a hug, nothing.
Probably didn't want you to give him a hug because then you could tell that
I
he
would
was...
have known. And like I told him he was stumbling a little bit last night, but he's not the most coordinated kid in the world. And he said he was okay. And then he ate.
What was the last time he ate, you think?
Last night. I feel like such a failure. You see there's food in the house. Oh my god. No. I should have made a feed. I should have done something. Can they really hide that from you like that?
They can hide a lot of things from you.
Oh my gosh.
So if you want
How
to...
can he hide that from me? How can he do that? Oh. I should have noticed this. I should have seen this. Oh my gosh.
Alright.
He's really good at hiding stuff. That's part of the reason his dad couldn't handle him is because he kept lying about stuff.
How old is he?
15. He'll be 16 in August.
Okay.
But his dad texted me last May and said, I can't handle him anymore. I have to send him to live with you. And I'm like, yeah, sure, absolutely.
Why was that? What did he do that?
He said he was lying to him. He was destroying things.
Is he hard to deal with?
I don't think so, but I'm stricter than his dad. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that, I mean, he's the lying's been a problem. But nothing major.
Yeah, nothing crazy.
No. He's...
All teenagers
He's tripped down the stairs a couple of times, like just half the flight. And then later he came back to me, admitted he did it intentionally. But I've asked him, I'm like, you're trying to hurt yourself? He's like, no, I just wanted to see what would happen. That's the way, a lot of times, he wants to see what would happen if he does stuff. And, oh my gosh.
But he did eat last night, you said?
Yes. He had some toast with butter on it, that's what he had. That's all he wanted to eat. He said his stomach was a little upset, he didn't want to eat anything else. You want to go check on the other kids?
Yeah, you can do that for sure.
I know my 20-year-old's got my 7-year-old, but still.
Nope, that's...
Hey. Paul. You okay up here? I knew I should have made him eat, but he just... Did you notice it was covering up with his clothing? You didn't notice, never mind. I love you, dear, but you never noticed it.
Did you know that he was in this hunger strike?
I think did I tell you or not? I don't know if I did or not. I don't think you did.
Because he's skin and bone.
I know, and I just... How did he...
He's really...
Well, he doesn't communicate with him hardly at all. Like, they say hi and they don't... Yeah, he's...
Are you guys full brothers or half brothers?
They're full. The only half is the one that's in there.
Okay. And when was the last time you talked to Tim?
Yesterday morning when I was getting him up.
No, yesterday afternoon before you left for work. Before I picked you up and took you to work because your e-bike tire was flat. You talked to him then.
I got off of work at 1
Alright.
this morning.
Has he talked to you recently about his problems at all, or what he's dealing with?
No, he never said a word to me.
Really talk at all.
Did you guys have normal conversations?
I think the last time we did was before all of this happened. After that,
They literally, because he works a lot and they didn't talk.
Yeah.
And sometimes brothers will tell each other what
That's true.
they're not willing to tell their
Tell me
parents.
why you went on hunger strike? I mean, I'm assuming it's...
Shanda would say that other than Timothy being skinny due to his hunger strike, the only other problem she noticed was that at 5:30 a.m., he had fallen out of bed and potentially hit his head really hard. The officers would say that Timothy was completely emaciated. He was so skinny that one could see the organs underneath his skin, his bones protruding and visible to the point where they were creating abrasions on his skin due to the rubbing. Most notably was his hips, knees, spine and ribs. Timothy was also noted to have multiple bruises and scratches around different parts of his face and body. The property is searched, and some items of interest are uncovered. A number of motion detectors were found in the basement, along with 4 motion-activated cameras. 2 cameras were in Timothy's bedroom, one pointing at his bed, and the other found underneath his bed. Another was discovered in the basement bathroom, and one more in the basement area, pointed at Timothy's room. They also find metal leg shackles in Timothy's desk drawer underneath his bunk bed, an incredibly spicy brand of hot sauce in the bathroom, along with numerous soiled adult diapers, and potentially the most troubling of the discoveries. A small closet is located, which had only a tarpaulin on the floor next to an empty cardboard box. This room is tiny and has no windows, and on the door that leads into this room is an alarm which would activate when opened. Upstairs, it is also noted that locks which required a key to open are found secured to the pantry, fridge, and freezer. What is also observed is the fact that there is an abundance of food in all of these secured storage locations. The officers note that Paul and Gabrielle both looked healthy with no signs of malnutrition, a stark comparison to their deceased brother. Due to the suspicious circumstances of Timothy's death, an autopsy is performed.
It was readily apparent upon viewing the body of Timothy Ferguson that he had a very low body weight. He appeared extremely emaciated. He was 68 inches tall, inches long, inches tall, and he weighed 69 pounds at that point. It was clear he had really a loss of all of his body fat. His cheeks were very narrow. He had, you could see and count all of his ribs, and even internally when we're looking at him, he had in areas where you typically have some body fat within your abdomen and in different areas, there was none. There was only the little bit of connective tissue that would normally hold the fat. But you could see all of his bony prominences, and on his back he had started getting some pressure sores because there wasn't a lot of padding in between his bones and his skin as well. So where those areas had pressure, the skin was starting to break down. His weight was 69 pounds. That was on the chart less than the first percentile, essentially 0 percentile. Every other child at that age largely would weigh more than him. It was a really severe, extreme emaciation. Timothy was also, though, he was dehydrated, so he was not getting adequate water either, and that makes it even more complicated. And he's even then more prone to low blood pressure. And we were able to determine that by looking at these the concentrations of different substances, the urea, nitrogen, and creatinine in his eye fluid. You'd say he was clearly very dehydrated. You could tell by looking at him.
Suspecting that Timothy has been abused, Shanda is arrested the next day, and an investigation commences. What is highly important throughout this investigation, and will be referenced a lot throughout the case moving forward, are text messages sent between Shanda and her 19-year-old son Paul in the 6 months leading up to Timothy's death. There are hundreds upon hundreds of messages, and the full history of them put together resembles something like a telephone book. I'll read out some examples to highlight what has been said, but I'll first give you as best a summary as I can so that we don't have to go through them all in this video. Essentially, the messages indicate that Shanda was unhappy with Timothy following her husband's stroke. Timothy was not following certain rules, such as taking apart items like the screws in his bed and his brother's toys. He also was caught sneaking out of his room in the middle of the night to take food that he wasn't supposed to be eating, and he was watching YouTube videos on the tablet that he was meant to be doing schoolwork on. Shanda had begun to punish Timothy for these infractions, but the punishments didn't seem to dissuade him from, in her opinion, acting out. Over time, she enlists the help of Paul, who not only watches Tim closely while she's at work, but enforces most of the punishments. A lot of these text communications will occur whilst Shanda is at work and speaking to Paul via message while he is at home. And she does this so that she can gain an understanding of what is happening back at the house. Initially, around the January-February period, the punishments appear to be mild in comparison to what is to come later anyway. Keep in mind, a lot of these messages that I'll be reading out are taken from different times and different days. These are snapshot examples of what is being said, and not a flowing conversation that occurred back and forth. Although I'm only reading out select examples from the entirety of it, there'll still be quite a lot to get through. To be as efficient as possible, I won't be calling out who is saying what, and if you're following along on screen, the blue messages are from Shanda, while the green are from Paul. Also, in regards to the punishments that you'll see mentioned, Timothy's access to food was being restricted. He had an increase in household chores, cleaning and tidying up. He's sometimes forced to stay awake, and at other times, he would have to stand against a wall with his nose touching it, or he would need to hold uncomfortable positions for extended periods of time, usually hours. Where I'll start reading the texts. Shanda has been talking with Paul about how she is upset due to Timothy watching YouTube on a tablet when he was meant to be doing schoolwork. Shanda asks, "What has he had to eat today?" Paul responds, 2 pieces of bread. Tell him that is all he's getting because he once again took advantage as far as the tablet goes. Please don't let Timothy get away with stuff today. I'm not. He's already against the wall. I'm just getting really tired of dealing with Timothy trying to take advantage of me. I'm ready to hit him. He's against the wall now, but he keeps trying to get off to watch over Gabrielle's shoulder at his iPad. I've had him go back up against the wall twice, and he's still not listening. What has he had to eat today? Nothing. Give him 1 piece of bread now, and tell him that is all he gets unless he actually does some work after I get home. If he does not do what he should, that will be all for today. Ask what he ate when you dozed off. I know he ate something. Can you deal with Timothy when you get home? He won't be honest. If Timothy has been upstairs all this time, there's no telling what he's done. You need to check the trash can and stuff for wrappers and packaging for stuff he's probably eaten. He took advantage of me again, so he's against the wall. He snuck an ice cream cone while I went to the bathroom, and was halfway done when I got out. Please hurry home, because at this point, I'm ready to knock him out. Okay, first of all, you're not gonna knock him out, and you know that. When do you get home? I've about had it with Timothy. I dozed off on the couch by accident, and he ate something. He's telling me it was chips, but it didn't sound like it. Okay, well he gets nothing else to eat today, and I'm actually going to make it worse than that when I get home. I will tell him what the rest is, but you can tell him it's actually going to be worse than that now. If he keeps this up, life is going to get more and more miserable. I know you're frustrated, but say this nicely. Tell him that since he keeps making horrible choices, life is about to get even worse for him. I woke up to Timothy playing on Gabrielle's tablet and just about smacked him. Tell him he'll be spending the entire time after I get home to the time he goes to bed doing the cold punishment, and that's not a short period of time. Since he's probably not going to get it anytime soon, can I have Timothy's last Christmas cake? Yes. So, did he get an ice cream cone or not? Yes, he had the wrapper. Make him throw it up in the bathroom. I'm going to buy the syrup that makes you throw up for times like this. I may need some help with it, but I'm about to get a lock for the pantry door and a lock for the fridge and both freezers. And then we won't leave any food out of those areas, and he won't have access to unlock those. If you disagree, please say so, but he is not going to win this. Seeing as Shanda felt that Timothy was unable to follow her rules whenever she or Paul wasn't watching, she purchases cameras and motion sensors and places them around his room in the basement. Along with the cameras and sensors, there are 2-way audio devices which allow Shanda to communicate with Timothy as she watches him from her phone. We can see this in the text messages as she instructs Paul over and over on how to use the camera system. She utilizes these cameras with an app on her phone to watch Timothy's every move, and every move she watches. The text message exchange is littered constantly, with Shanda messaging Paul whilst she is at work, and telling him that she has noticed Timothy doing something he shouldn't. Then, Paul would have to handle the punishment of his younger brother. From what I can tell, in the early months, January and February, around when this text message history starts, punishments include what I described earlier, And in addition, he would have to hold uncomfortable kneeling positions for extended periods. He'd have his face covered with a mask so that he can't see. He's forced to drink salt water, more food restrictions, and sleep deprivation. His hands are bound using zip ties, and later down the track, handcuffs and leg shackles are used. Quite often he would receive punishments for not being able to do his punishments correctly. For example, he's not standing correctly for hours on end in an uncomfortable position like she has instructed. Or he's not kneeling properly with his hands behind his head in a prisoner of war pose. His arms slipping from behind his head as he adjusts to get more comfortable. This is not allowed. And as the texts go on, they will begin to reflect this reality which was inflicted upon the young boy. These messages coming up are from February of 2022. He grabbed some of Adam's butterscotch. Did he eat the butterscotch? If so, use a toothbrush and make him throw it up. Find out what he has snuck right the heck now, 'cause I know he has snuck stuff since you weren't doing what you were supposed to. What do you mean you didn't know he was awake? You both should have been awake at 10:30. I am not happy. Check the brownies in the kitchen. Check everything not locked away. Check where the flipping keys have been. For now, I've left Timothy's eyes uncovered, but if he keeps looking around, I'll put the mask on him. Messages from March of 2022. Do I let Timothy go to bed yet? He has not only been disobedient, but also hasn't stopped asking to go to bed for the past hour. How has he been disobedient? He just won't listen, or does something I didn't tell him he could. He just tried claiming his zip cuffs were too tight when I didn't even tighten them to where there's no room for his wrists. Leave them as they are, and I will check them when I get home, and you can tell him that. And if he lied about that, he gets himself in even more trouble. Okay, tell him he just restarted, he's not eating again. He's not standing up the right way. How long have you let him stand like that? Can I tell him he's pathetic? Something which I feel to be worth mentioning. Throughout all of these messages, there is a substantial amount of discussion regarding what the family will be eating on any given day or night. It appears that Timothy has been restricted to only slices of bread, but alongside this, the family is still eating very well. Shanda at times will discuss with Paul about feeding her younger son Gabriel, while in the same minute, she'll tell him to make sure Timothy only has bread. And in addition to this, there are almost nightly discussions about what they will all be eating minus Timothy. Salmon, Mexican food, KFC, all of this food that they are enjoying, and Timothy is not allowed to have any of it. Around this point in time, new punishments are introduced. One in the form of Timothy having to run up and down stairs on a timer, sometimes with Paul chasing him. If he doesn't complete the set in time, he receives further punishments. Also, you'll start to see a small room being referenced. This is the closet where the tarpaulin was found on the floor. Timothy would be locked in this room with nothing, no light, no bedding, and he would be forced to stay in there for extended periods of time. And the last punishment introduced at this time are called wall sits. He must squat against the wall in a sitting position with no support so that his legs burn. Paul and Shanda begin to attach a motion sensor alarm to Timothy's arms and belt. They do this so that if he moves when he's not supposed to, it will not only trigger to alert them, but the sound will be highly uncomfortable for him. Something else that you'll notice through this next month of texts. It seems Timothy is getting desperate to get food, and he proceeds to find more ways to avoid the motion sensors and cameras so that he can sneak upstairs and grab something to eat. On one occasion, he even breaks one of the locks off of the fridge so that he can get to what's inside. I'll proceed now with reading messages from April. The next time he does a down and back up without stopping, you can come in. Next time he does 4 straight without stopping, you're done. 2 more round trips without him stopping and he can come in. He ate the whole bag. He stole that right in front of your nose, along with bread. How? I will ask once he's done making himself throw up. He isn't getting to sleep tonight. You're gonna have to watch him. He's already trying to slouch and not stand up straight against the wall like he should be. Push him until it looks like he's about to fall over, please. He really can't do anything right. Can we just send him to juvie already? It's so obvious that he's not going to stop. He's just going to keep going, so why not just get rid of the problem? You can also tell him I changed my mind on the salt water, because I don't want him to have any excuses to sit down by trying to claim he has diarrhea. He's not getting away with anything. I'm just not giving him an excuse to sit down. He has to stand up and then run the stairs today. He up and running the stairs? Is he up and running the stairs every 30 minutes? Make him run like crazy, please. And you need to make him run up and down the stairs a ton for that, even in the cold and rain. And don't let him get away with complaining about his knees. They are just fine. Can we just knock him out so he's asleep but sore? Thankfully, Shanda would reply to this one and say no in capital letters, followed by an exclamation mark. I told him his punishment for sneaking today was to stay up tonight. Can't go back on that now. You think I don't want to sleep? I have to work super early. But giving in to him would be the worst possible move. In the lead up to these messages, Paul alerts Shanda that Timothy has eaten her burger. Shanda says, "What did he eat? I ate my burger already. He ate the crust." And it's later verified that he obtained that crust from the bin. Shanda replies, "Go try make him throw up, please." Directly following that message she sends, "He's not hungry. He's being a jerk." In the lead up to these messages, Shanda has decided, as a punishment, Timothy is to sleep in the closet for the night. I was going to make him stay out there, but given everything now, maybe in his small room without anything, even a sheet, and an alarm on the door. Paul questions, "And no sleep for him?" And then Shanda replies, "I honestly don't care tonight at this point. He won't have the benefit of any coverage or anything, so if he can get some sleep like that, oh well." We're on the month of May now, and from what I can tell, Timothy is only sleeping in the closet at this point. He no longer has access to his bed. According to the texts, he has nothing in there with him, such as pillows, bedding or coverage. It's around here that I noticed Timothy's physical state begin to drastically deteriorate. He is having trouble walking around, processing what's going on, and even responding. In reference to his difficulty walking, Shanda labels it as the fake peg leg thing. Please get home soon. I'm ready to strangle Timothy and then knock him the frick out. He told me he needed to go to the bathroom, so I deactivated his alarm, only to hear something and see him trying to sneak pizza. He's up against the wall beside me. Did he actually get any pizza? Did you check his breath? I'm ready to beat him within a millimeter of his life, mama. Timothy is on a 5-minute bathroom timer. Why is he on a 5-minute timer? He doesn't get 5 minutes. He gets 60 seconds, unless he needs to poop, and then he gets 2 minutes. I'm now ready to beat him black and blue. Okay, that's not the correct way to react, and you know that. I know, but I'm so far beyond done with his bullcrap. Me too. Did he heat the pancake in a cup? Otherwise, it's just powder, and it's not safe to eat without being heated. No, he just ate the powder. That could make him sick, the dummy. Tabasco in his mouth and make him swallow, and lots of it. And do it every 30 minutes until you leave. Okay, he also crapped himself. In his pants? Seriously? Make him do work in the garage with nothing on below the waist. Just make sure the garage door stays closed. And then he can stand down against the wall with nothing on below the waist until you leave. Just please make sure Gabriel does not go downstairs at all while he's standing there like that. Did he say why the heck he did that? He didn't want to disturb anyone. Tell him I want to know the real reason, because I know darn good and well that's not it. The Wisely transaction is handcuffs and leg cuffs for Timothy from Amazon. Handcuffs and leg cuffs are coming tomorrow now. Not today. June 2022, 1 month before Timothy passes away. Once again, the punishments have intensified, and you will notice that Timothy is now subjected to ice baths. His diet consists exclusively of bread, occasional rice, and hot sauce. The hot sauce is both poured directly into his mouth, and it's used to cover the other items he's allowed to eat. It's important to note that this brand of hot sauce is called Extreme Regret, one of the most powerful money can buy.
Could you go ahead and read for the jury the label there for that hot sauce?
Elijah's extreme regret is screaming super hot. It packs the fire of the two hottest peppers in the world, the Trinidad Scorpion and Carolina Reaper peppers. Your tongue will burn from the sting of the scorpion. Your eyes will tear up as sweat pours off your head. Your throat feels the burn of the Carolina Reaper going down. The pain becomes unbearable, and you feel like you just ate a burning hot coal. That's when you realize extreme regret. Not for wimpy hot sauce lovers. Use with caution, or you'll regret it.
I'll start this batch of text messages off with a message from Paul. He has noticed that Timothy has become incredibly skinny and sends a photo of the boy's body and leg to his mother. I won't show these photos because of how horrific they are, but to briefly describe them, Timothy looks like a skeleton. There is no muscle on him anywhere. His organs are visible, and bones are rubbing right up against his skin. The photo of his leg is particularly disturbing. Paul says, Timothy tried to sneak food. I yelled at him, and then he became momentarily unresponsive. And then I saw this. He's bone thin, Mama. I think, honestly, we need to actually feed him. Also, it's no wonder he's hardly capable of standing. Shanda replies, Kay, give him bread, please. I hear you. Give peanut butter sandwiches and water. The unresponsiveness, it's probably fake, but I see what you mean. After these photos are sent, nothing more of Timothy's physical state is discussed in any meaningful detail. Shanda and Paul resume their treatment of him as though those photos made no impact. There is no concern for him moving forward from either Paul or Shanda, and it would seem that Timothy from this point on is practically never allowed to leave the closet. This group of messages on screen now all occur after the hour of 3 a.m. Shanda and Paul had been punishing Timothy all night. No one in the household had any sleep, and the two adults are frustrated because they say Timothy is keeping them awake, seeing as he can't do his punishments correctly. It ends with Paul kicking and damaging the closet door of the small room that Timothy was in, and he does this because Timothy wasn't able to sit still, thus triggering the motion detectors over and over. I've stopped reading out the messages at this point because it's endless, over and over, with different forms of abuse, hot sauce in Timothy's eyes, threats to turn Timothy over to Paul if he doesn't behave, acknowledgement that Timothy is thin, but Shanda believes he's losing weight on purpose to make her feel bad for punishing him. Paul and Shanda mock the boy for shaking and telling them that he needs support. They berate him for wetting himself and punish him with more cold showers and ice bath upon ice bath. As we move into July, just under a week before Timothy dies, his physical state is deteriorating, and this is causing no end of frustration for the adults that are meant to be caring for him. They tease him and complain about, using their words, his wonky fake walk thing. It appears that they are aware that Timothy's physical state is dangerous, and they increase the amount of food he receives, of course, covered in more hot sauce. Shanda mentions that she doesn't want anybody to see Timothy in his current state, and with all of that, it now lands us on the day before and the night leading into Timothy's death. It's in these last messages that we get a glimpse at Timothy's final moments, and in my opinion, he's a shell of a human who is slipping away before their very eyes. Timothy was doing his fake stumbling and falling last night, of course, so I decided to prove once again how fake it is. I asked him if he would stop doing that if he can eat a whole pizza by himself, and he said yes, of course. And then I told him how obvious it was that it was fake, and he had just proven that yet again. And of course, he just looked down and didn't respond. Just so you know, Timothy hasn't budged. What is his problem? I really, really, really do not want you to lose hours at work, but I'm about to have you call in, at least until I can get home. I don't trust what he's going to try pull today. I can't believe he keeps getting worse and worse with his stupidity. Now he's refusing to answer me, so go throw some cold water on him as well. Please do the water now. He is being beyond stupid. I really don't want Gabrielle seeing him like that with no clothes on. I can't work like this when he's doing this. There's no telling what he'll do when you leave, and I don't want to risk Gabrielle seeing him like that with no clothing on. Why is he doing this to me? Am I not going through enough already? Feel free to go dump more cold water on him. He moved over where he's not laying in what you dumped on him earlier. Do you think any part of this is real? He's had more of a break in the last couple of days than he did before that. He can't be more tired than he was. Is he seriously trying to make us believe that he can't communicate? Be honest with me. Are you worried about him at all? Or is it all a bunch of BS, like it has been for days? It's the same old BS. Okay, let me rephrase that question then. Do you honestly believe we should be worried? I don't know. I'm just tired of him being such a nuisance. Feel free to tell him that once he stops acting like this, he can get out of the cold bath. This will make him more miserable. And try to force him to talk to you. We both know he can. His eyes do have a slightly glazed look, but he smirked. You can make your eyes glaze over by staring for too long. Shanda would like to see what Paul means when he says that Timothy is unresponsive and has a glazed look in his eye. So Paul sends a photo of Timothy who is positioned in the ice bath. Again, the photo won't be shown, but he's staring into the distance, and the best way I can describe it is that he looks dead. After reviewing the photo, Shanda continues to explain how Timothy is faking all of this, the shaking, the groaning, and the glazed look in his eye. Upon hearing that his mother believes Timothy is making this all up, Paul becomes enraged. Never in my life have I ever wanted to beat someone so bad. Trust me, I understand right now, but you have to calm down. He's only making it worse for himself. Heat up a set of pizza rolls and take one downstairs and offer it to Timothy and see what he does. Put it right in front of his mouth, but be ready to yank it back if he tries to eat it. Hold it right in front of his lips. How much you want to bet he's going to try eat it? So, how is he reacting now? It looked like he tried to grab something or do something with his arm. He's not. He's still being stubborn. I really don't understand it, considering we know it's all fake. Maybe force his mouth open and put some hot sauce in there, considering everything he's put us through. Is it mean to ask you to turn his body slightly, where his head would go over the side of the top backwards? That will be even less comfortable. I can't deal with him anymore. How can he lay there like that for any length of time? Ugh. He's doing this to tick us off and make us give up. And at this point, I'm ready to beat him within an inch of death and go to work. And that is exactly what he wants you to do. He will not outlast us. I can promise you that. This is getting beyond pathetic. But he will not win this. Not gonna happen. Oh, okay. Crazy thought. Tell him if he actually sits up by himself and stays sitting up, he'll get some pizza rolls. Don't tell him it's only 2 rolls. And I'm okay if they're frozen rather than cooked. He just moved his head, by the way. Go tickle him mercilessly. Well, he was ticklish. This message alludes that Paul tried to tickle his brother, and the once sensitive boy now had no response. Wouldn't surprise me if he had enough determination to resist right now. Was worth a shot. He's still breathing, right? I just have to ask. He's doing enough to make you paranoid, even though we know it's fake. I wonder how it would feel to have that hot sauce on your private parts. I'm not saying touch him there, not at all, but dripping a little bit there. Is that horrible? I don't know, and I don't care. Does that mean you're willing to try it? No. Paul leaves to go to work, and Timothy remains in the ice bath. When Shanda gets home, She keeps him there, and it is estimated that he spends about 9 hours sitting in the cold water. This now brings us to the final text message which Shanda sends to Paul at around 11 p.m. I ended up dragging him back to his small room because I wasn't going to risk having him access to the tub or other things overnight. He's still trying to be stupid, but I'll tell you more tomorrow while I take you to work, describing how many different ways I proved that he's still faking. He's still doing it though. It's beyond ridiculous.
Well, at the time of autopsy, one of the findings we had were that the lining of the stomach had what we call Wisniewski spots. These are dark brown spots that are in the lining of the stomach. All right, and they're a little bit unusual. They're very well demarcated, dark brown, almost black spots scattered over the inside of the stomach. And at the time of the autopsy, I certainly took note of it. These are seen on occasion. Most commonly, they're seen in individuals whose body temperature is very low, who have hypothermia, hypo meaning low temperature. The hypothermia, the findings in the stomach were significant, and then later I learned that there were reported prolonged ice baths. And I believe that was those were truly hypothermic type Wisniewski spots. In this scenario, especially in someone with this extreme emaciation, to be subjected to extreme cold temperatures, the body is not at all equipped to handle that. He could be shivering, but it's also possible that he doesn't have the capacity any longer. So if he's not shivering, it's probably more it's probably more alarming than if he were. His cause of death was dehydration and extreme emaciation due to malnutrition and starvation. Go ahead.
No, that's fine.
All right. Yeah, there was I also contributed. There's another significant contributing condition, and that was something called exogenous hypothermia. The manner of death is best classified as homicide.
And could you explain the reasoning behind that finding?
This death was caused by the actions of others to do harm or cause death.
Unknown to Shanda at the time, in one of the cameras that was placed downstairs, it had a micro SD card which was saving what it recorded. From 11 p.m. all the way through to the next morning when the 911 call was placed, this device recorded and saved video and audio. This footage captures Shanda placing Timothy in the small room once she had taken him out of the ice bath. The video is not shown, but the detective working on this case reviews it, and he would go on to explain what he saw when watching over the footage.
11 o'clock or so, do you observe Ms. Vander Ark on that video?
I do.
And what does she do?
On the video around that time that you mentioned, Miss Vander Ark is observed placing a tarp into the closet and kind of spreading it out as a makeshift bed. After she lays the tarp on the floor, she is seen dragging Timothy by the arms onto the tarp and into the room. His eyes were open, but not really seeing anything. He appeared to be unresponsive. He didn't speak at all. He moaned a few times. It's very concerning watching that and seeing his appearance. Very, very thin bones protruding. In particular, he wasn't wearing any pants, so I could see his hip bones and his knee joint very prominently displayed as she positioned him in front of the camera.
And did it appear that he was wearing a diaper?
He was wearing an adult diaper. I could hear Miss Vander Ark tell Timothy that he is pathetic, and then adds, but I already knew that as she was dragging him in. She also makes a comment to him that you owe me the biggest apology in the world, and suggests that he wouldn't be able to leave the restroom or leave the room for restroom breaks unless she receives an apology from him.
And then does she leave the room at that point?
She does.
Does she come back a little while later?
I believe it was approximately 15 minutes later she comes back into the room. Initially, she had positioned him on his side with his face facing the camera, and over the period of about 15 minutes he rolled onto his back, so his face was no longer visible.
When she comes back in the second time, what does she do?
She repositions him so his face is visible to the camera. She has one of her Great Danes come into the room and instructs the Great Dane to lick his face, trying to get what appeared to me, trying to get a reaction out of him, and even makes a comment to the dog saying that, see, he reacted to you. During this time, and previously while I observed Timothy in the room, he was taking short, shallow breaths through his mouth. Kind of picture how a fish out of water would breathe, with gasping for breath through their mouth. And she clamps his mouth shut, tells him that he doesn't need to breathe like that, and then holds his mouth shut for a period of time until he's forced to take breaths through his nose, and tells him, see, you didn't need to breathe through your mouth like that. You're being a dummy or an idiot, something along those lines.
And did she leave the room at that point?
She does.
And is that the last time anyone actually has any contact with Timothy in that room?
That's correct.
And at some point, does it appear that, and that you're not a medical doctor, I understand that, but does it appear that Timothy actually passes away while in view of that camera?
Yes, it appears that way to me. He can be seen, his chest rising, lowering very slightly, small little movements, and then there is a point in time where you stop seeing that, and his body just kind of relaxes, and it appears to me that he has died at that point.
As mentioned, this video records all through the night and continues to capture footage the next morning when Shanda discovers Timothy deceased. This part of the video was played in court, but only audio is available to review. Although, even if video was available, I highly doubt I would play it. The excerpt that is played in court goes on for around 30 minutes, and I will present excerpts from it, but a brief summary first. It captures Shanda finding Tim, attempting to resuscitate him with the help of Paul, and it takes her about 18 minutes before she contacts 911.
Yeah, what's wrong? I don't feel breathing or anything. Timothy? Oh my God. Timothy. Come on, buddy. Timothy. No, can't. This can't happen. Timothy. Hey. Is it okay? I don't know that. I'm feeling it home. Who's resisting? Who's resisting steps? Is he okay? He feels cold. Mom. Yeah, I know it's cold, but he's not stiff, so is he okay? Sit him up, please. Come on. Please. Please. Please, baby, come on. Timothy. Here, see if you can open his jaw. Timothy. Come on. Timothy. Give him a rescue breath. Come on, quick. What? It's small. Okay. And it's still very, very wet. Okay, give another. I saw him living during the night, baby. Yeah. Timothy. Come on. Come on, guys. I'm gonna go get some water, see if we can get it down. Come on, buddy. Come on. We can't close his eyes, but that's usually a sign that he's not gone, but... Come on, buddy. Can you open his jaw for me? Yeah. Come on. Please, come on. Timothy. Come on, Timothy. Here. Let's get out of here and set him up or something. Come on. Probably not. Well, then, that's a good thing. Come on. Go get a towel quick. Come on, buddy. Oh my God, this cannot be happening. No. Come on, buddy. Come on, Timothy. Come on, buddy. Hurry up, please. There's one in the bathroom. Come on. What? Did you get something? Keep going. Keep going. I don't understand.
I don't either. Susan calling anyone?
Right, yeah. Come on, Susie, come on, baby. Come on. Oh, let's just, oh. Come on, buddy. Oh my God, come on, buddy. Come on, sweetie.
His dog was there.
Yeah, it is. Come on, buddy. What happened? What happened?
I don't know.
Take the pants on the seat so I walk. Come on.
Yeah.
Can you take over? Good night.
Yeah.
I need rest. Come on, buddy. Come on, buddy. Come on. Come on, sweetie. His eyes should close so that big. His eyes should close. No, they're not. Getting anything from him? You can hold that dream. Come on, buddy. You have your belt.
Well,
You always put it on his thing. I just want to make it look like he's in that way. I have to go on the line.
yeah.
You have to tell him he's been on a hunger strike. When you leave. I don't know what to do, Paul. I woke up to go to work. Yeah, and my son's not breathing. I woke up to check on him before. He's 15. He's been on a hunger strike. He wouldn't eat lately. And I've been checking on all night because he said he wasn't feeling good last night. And I woke up to get ready for work this morning, and he's not breathing. He ate yesterday, but he hasn't eaten. He's driving me crazy because he wouldn't eat hardly. And so he got really skinny and he won't eat. And I was just about to call the doctor this morning because he's just been horrible. I mean, he's a teenager. He's 15 and he didn't eat yesterday, but not a lot. I checked on him at, 5:30. He's got like brown stuff coming out of his mouth. I don't know, it's brown liquid.
It smells bad.
It's like dribbling out. It's not the first time he's done this with not eating, so. But my husband and stepdad had a stroke in January, and then his dad and stepmom called us last week, told us they were divorced. And so it's been rough, and he's been, like I said, he's done a hunger strike before. I would have been more worried. Well, let's go. I got it. So,
Well, I'm here, sir.
Shanda is charged with first-degree murder and first-degree child abuse. When officers went to her house to arrest her on July 7th, they noticed a few small changes around the property. Most notably, some devices had been disposed of, including the alarm, which was fixed to the small room door.
All right.
Sorry,
Yeah, it's been a bad couple days.
it's been the past 6 months. I had a stroke 6 months ago. Sorry.
Nope, you're all right. I do have to handcuff you, but I'll do it in the front.
But if my blood sugar crashes, I need that.
Are you diabetic?
I'm reactive hypoglycemic.
Okay. You take medication for that?
No. I have a service dog normally, but I didn't bring him.
Yeah.
For good reason.
All right. I can let you have that all the way up until the jail. But the jail won't let you bring in any kind of food or nothing. So if you want to drink it, you can always drink it now.
Just worried I won't keep it to my stomach.
All right.
I haven't been able to keep anything down
Oh,
the last couple of days.
I don't want you puking then if you're going to try to drink it.
I can try. We'll see. I don't know.
All right. So I got handcuffs on you. I'm going to do it in the front because you're not going to give me any problems. But we're going to have to go down there.
Strength.
Pardon?
I don't have the strength to do anything. I wouldn't anyway. But did y'all lose an officer?
But I have to cuff you now.
Did y'all lose somebody?
Yes, a Detroit officer was killed yesterday.
I'm so sorry.
Yep. Come this way. I need you. I want to see if there's a girl here to check your pockets. So she has a lot of medical problems, but she really doesn't take any medication. But she does need
Any mental health issues at all?
Yeah.
ADHD?
ADHD, OCD, and
OCD just
sensory.
means she's cleaning one spot over and over again, they say.
Sometimes.
That's actually one form, it's not the form.
I know what OCD is.
She does have, she says, allergy-induced asthma, so she can't wear masks.
I had a doctor's note, I didn't bring it with me, I didn't know.
I hate to tell you this is not school. Doctor notes do not work. We have our own doctors, and they will deal with you on that.
Shanda is taken into custody and she provides a statement as to what happened. She arrived home from work at 6 p.m. on July 6th and had brought food home for Timothy, which he refused to eat because he was on a hunger strike. She finally managed to get him to eat some toast, and she observed this. At 10 p.m., she told him to go to bed in his bunk and attempted to give him a hug and a kiss, but Timothy refused because he didn't like affection. She went to bed at midnight, then woke up around 5:30 to a thud and found that Timothy had fallen out of the bunk. She helped him get back in and then went to check on him an hour later, but he wasn't breathing, so she and Paul removed him from the bed and attempted to perform CPR. She has no explanation for why rigor mortis had set in, which means that Timothy must have died hours before the time she says he fell out of the bed. She also has no explanation for the bruises and cuts on his body and face. Timothy was known to fall out of bed or down the stairs every 10 days or so, and this could explain those injuries on him. She insists that she had no idea how thin he was, and that he had done another hunger strike before, in January and February. She explains that the motion sensors were to stop him from sneaking food in the night, and the cameras were for her other son, Gabriel, who had a tendency to remove his clothes and walk around naked, something which she wanted to monitor and ensure didn't happen. The alarm on the closet door was because she stored her sewing machine in there, and Timothy liked to pull it apart. So this alarm was to prevent him from doing that. She has no explanation for why the room smelled of urine and feces, and why the sewing machine was found in the garage surrounded by clutter. The tarpaulin in the closet is explained because her dog once managed to lock itself in there and it peed everywhere, so the tarp was placed down in case that ever happened again. Shanda explains that Timothy was indeed a difficult child. After her husband's stroke, she admits to feeling overwhelmed and lonely, and says that in this time, Timothy had begun to take advantage of her and her situation. This did frustrate her and led to increased punishments. She admits to having locked the food away in storage, but claims that if Timothy ever requested food, she would give him the key so that he had free access to whatever he wanted. She says that she never isolated him, and he was free to leave the house. He wasn't a prisoner at all. The hot sauce was purchased because Timothy, according to her, absolutely loved spicy food. She doesn't know why the sauce was found in his bathroom, but it was probably because he enjoyed it and took it down there. Furthermore, the handcuffs and leg shackles are explained because she says that Paul needed them for a TikTok video. They were never to be used for any form of punishment, and only as a prop for Paul to use on his social media. At this time, although Paul is not arrested, he's brought in for questioning, where he's told that he needs to be honest about what happened, seeing as the detective has reviewed all of the text messages and video footage from the security cameras.
I mean, there's clearly a lot of messages about stuff that you guys are doing with him, about what he's eating, about restricting his food. How did that all work? Like, what was he allowed to eat?
We stopped the food restrictions recently because we had noticed his thing. We wanted to get that back on. We didn't want any of this. We never wanted him to be injured or hurt. I loved him so much.
Yeah, I can tell that. I can certainly tell that. When you say we, you're talking about your mother. And
yes, she loved him. We wanted what's best. It was very dangerous. He would pull the outlet covers off. He would screw with the light fixtures. It was okay. Our house in Edmond was his room. He'd pull the studs out of the wall, rip off the painting, the paint. It was, yeah.
I saw on your phone that you had sent a couple of pictures to your mom.
Yes.
pretty skinny, and you said, hey, he's nothing but skin. Like,
Yeah, I was very concerned. It just,
what do you think that maybe would have been a good time to take him to the doctor, or?
yeah, honestly, that probably would have been one too. I don't know.
And then you sent a picture of like his legs that were just basically gone, right? So, no wonder he can't stand, or something along the lines.
Yeah, but the thing is, before yesterday, and I think the day before, he could walk.
Yeah.
He might need a little support every so often, like he put his hand against the wall or grab the rail of the stairs. But after a couple of seconds, he'd let go and be fine.
Okay.
It was never anything major.
Yeah. When was like the last time he was really like talking to you, like able to have a conversation, or at least try to have a conversation?
Last time he actually talked was 3 days ago, but the day before, or the day after that, the day before yesterday, he could talk. He talked a small amount in the morning, but then he just sort of was making groans and moans, and it concerned me. As my mother was driving me to work, I recommended that maybe we should take him to the hospital.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that ever happened or not.
What did she say about that when you made that recommendation?
I don't know. I think after that, I think that was like as I was getting out of the car and shutting the door.
What's the photograph in the back of his face? Like zoomed in on his face.
He had been taking a bath.
Okay.
And I went in there to check on him at one point, and he was just kind of laying there. I'm like, "Bud, you okay?" He didn't respond, but he was looking around, and he was breathing. I know that much.
Yeah.
So,
You say he was in the bath. That wasn't a nice, enjoyable bath, though, right? That was a punishment bath, right? That's a cold, ice cold bath. And that's hard to understand.
I did wash. I did tell him that if he wanted to wash up, and he did. But then, in the middle of it, I think the whole just laying there in a daze happened.
When he's getting these ice baths, I know there's numerous of them, right? I mean, because I've read through the messages.
Yes.
How are you getting the ice? Like, where's it coming from?
We have an ice machine upstairs. It's not a lot. I can barely create any that's enough to make it a full-on.
But it's a cold bath.
Yeah.
And you're putting ice in there. So he's sleeping in the closet.
Yes. We made sure that it was cleaned. He had a mattress in there, but then he decided to rip off the cover, like a sort of plastic cover we put on there to keep it from getting smelly and disgusting. We always wanted what's best for him. I don't know.
So you guys decided to move him into the closet. There's an alarm on the door. What's that for?
When he would try and sneak, because if you notice, there was also one in the garage door. That was also because, there's some food in there that he would try and sneak.
Right.
And it wasn't just that he was hungry at some points for those. It was that he wanted something sweet.
And so, whose idea was it for him to just eat bread? Is that your idea?
No.
Whose idea was that?
My mother's.
Tell me about the hot sauce. I know that was used as both the punishment and it was put on the bread. Was it always on the bread?
Not always, no. But the thing is, it still largely did anything for him. There would be times where it would do something for me because I'd accidentally rub my eye after I put it on there. It was, ow. Whenever my mother told me to put hot sauce on it, I did. It was normally a thin layer to make sure that it wouldn't be too much. Because from what I know, the ghost, or the California Reaper is, 2,000 Scoville? Or 2 million Scoville?
What does that mean?
It's the hot sauce, or the heat index, basically.
Okay. And that's pretty high?
Very.
Was he eating this bread with hot sauce, or was he?
Yeah, he was.
Is that really the only things he had to eat those days, or would he get other things to eat?
From the bread and rice, other than that, not that I know of.
Okay. I know it was pepper sports for punishment. And what did she say? She said, I didn't know anything about that. Right? Why do you think she's saying those things? Why do you think
She doesn't want to appear like a bad person. She doesn't want to be the bad guy in this. We never wanted any of this. We want him to be healthy. I know that for a fact. We should have been so much. I should have at least put my foot down on something. But it's not that I'm afraid of her. I can't fear her because she's not the type to instill fear.
Yeah. But she knows that you shouldn't be using hot sauce as a punishment, right? She knows better than that. And you know better than that too, right? Yeah, I think that anybody with some common sense knows that hot sauce is not something used to punish a child for eating food that they're not supposed to eat, or for disrespect, for not following orders. We know those things aren't okay.
I know that. We've tried so many different things. We just were running out of options of trying to find a punishment that would actually work. And even that did nothing.
Right.
And we still kept trying though. I don't know why.
Tell me about the handcuffs. I know that once again, she took no blame for that, right? And who did she put it all on? She put it all on you. She said that was your idea and that those were yours and that you did those things. But I think that's not the truth from what I read on here. What's the real truth on that?
We would have him against the wall at some points and he would try to move. And at one point we'd actually put motion sensors on him to stop that. But
on him himself?
Yeah, like they were they would sense any sort of vibrations. Yeah. But the thing is, he'd learned to trick them by moving so slow, or they'd be on his door and he'd be moving so slow that it wouldn't set it off. So he'd get away with stuff.
Okay.
So we also did stop the leg cuffs, I think a while ago, because we noticed that his ankles were swelling. So we stopped that because we didn't want his legs to become irreparable.
How often were you guys putting leg cuffs on before that? Was that something like at night to stop him from moving around, or what was it for?
I think we did it once or so. Once, maybe twice at night.
What about handcuffs or zip ties? What did you guys use those for?
The zip ties were either to fasten the vibrational arms to his belt during the day.
Yeah.
Or to put it on his wrist, not too tight and I would make sure, after the first time we did it, I would make sure to cut off the end of the zip ties because I had them loose. And then he decided to tighten them to where they were nearly cutting off circulation.
Yeah.
So after that point, I myself, when I was told to put him in the zip ties, I'd grab a pair of scissors and snip off the ends to make sure that he couldn't tighten it to where it was cutting anything off. Normally we have him do this. It was something that I'm not sure if it was my father or my mother back when they were together, but when we were put in timeout, we'd be told to do this. And so sometimes though, he'd try and do stuff like this, or just try and put his hands down by his sides. So we do that to keep him.
Where did he spend most of his time?
In his room. We wouldn't make him stand. Sometimes we would have him kneeling, like on his knees, like this, facing one of the corners. But
what was that for? For punishment?
Yeah, I don't even know what it was for at this point. I'm not sure. Back in Oklahoma, he was also even destructive at school, destroying textbooks, desks, really anything. I don't know.
So
he was a destructive child.
When did this stuff kind of start? Sounds like to me it started after your stepdad was out of the house.
Because Timothy would take advantage of that situation. We were all stressed. And he would take advantage of that. Anything he can find to take advantage of. Almost his entire life. Except for, I think when he was still a baby. He would find some way to take advantage of whatever he can.
Can I ask you this, like, straight up? You keep saying love, love. Do you feel like this was love? That he stabbed now because he couldn't eat food? Does that feel like love to you?
No.
He stabbed because he couldn't eat.
No.
And I don't know anybody that thinks that's love. What I think's happening is your mom's convinced you that she's this perfect person, and she's asking you to do all these things that are literally killing your brother. I know she's not perfect. How's that love? How is love ice baths? How is love handcuffing? And how is love restricting movement? And how is love hot sauce in the mouth and only eating bread? What if you only got to eat bread? How would you feel? What if you only got to eat bread with hot sauce? Would you eat?
No.
You're pretty skinny already. It wouldn't take you long.
This is my natural weight. I have an overactive metabolism.
But it wouldn't take you long to be very much skin and bones if all you got to eat was bread and hot sauce, because how could you eat it? And how could you feel good about eating it?
I do know that my mother, she's not perfect, but she's not a bad person.
Do you know, can I ask you this? Do you know of any good people who starved a child to death? Tell me of one that you know. Tell me of one that you know. How is that? How is that a loving person? How is that a loving mother? You know what that sounds like to me? And honestly, the worst mother I ever met in my entire life. That's what it sounds like to me.
I know. But she's not.
Maybe she wasn't to you. Maybe she was a good mother to you. And maybe she wasn't to Gabriel. Sounds like she's a very good mother to Gabriel. But to one of the three children, she didn't care. You can say it if you want. She starved him to death because he wouldn't stop taking food. Well, maybe he's taking food because he wants to live. Have you ever thought about that?
Yes.
Maybe he's stealing food so that he can survive. He's dead because he didn't get food. She put you right in the middle of this where it looks like some of the stuff your idea. And it actually looks like in some of these things that you kind of enjoy it. That you kind of enjoy punishing him for doing wrong things. Do you feel like you kind of enjoyed punishing him for that stuff?
No.
Maybe not that he was in pain, but that you were in charge and you got to tell him, you can't do that. Go do this. This is your punishment. Did you like some of that stuff?
No.
Did she like some of that stuff?
No.
How come you guys are laughing and joking about it sometimes with smiley faces? And her choice was more punishment, less food. More punishment. The only food you get is bread. And the only bread you get sometimes is with the hottest hot sauce that we can find. That's all you get to eat. There's no way that you can look at yourself and think, that's okay. And that your mom's good for that. She was doing what's best for him. How could that be best for him? Why couldn't it be a piece of chicken that's cooked? Why couldn't he eat that? Why does it have to be bread with hot sauce? It's not about punishment. You need food to survive. You need food to live. He didn't get to live because of that. Because of what you guys did.
I told you everything that I have. I don't want to live a life where I regret the fact that I hid somehow, something, and I've told you everything I know.
How do you feel about living a life where you hid that your brother wasn't eating from society, that you hid that your brother was dying? How do you feel about that?
I hate myself, okay? If I could take his place right now, if I could give him back his life, I'd do it in a dead-dumb heartbeat.
How do you feel about over and over and over again defending your mother about how good she is? Do you feel like that's the truth anymore? Because I'm quite disgusted by her. I'm disgusted by her.
She never wanted this.
How could she not know what's happening? How could she think this is fake? How does she not know she's starving him? How does she not see that he's wasting away? And you here, you're telling me that you've got some mental health issues, but you graduated from high school, and it's very obvious to you that he's got malnutrition, right? It's very obvious to you. But your mom here's not seeing that, and she's a law school graduate, and she's very smart. Do you see what I'm looking at here? She's a liar. She's lied to you about so much stuff. At some point, you need to stand up for yourself and realize she's the manipulator, she's the liar, she put you in this spot, she did this to your brother, using you. Do you not see that? That she used you to do this to your brother. Your mother used you. She's so smart. She's smarter than any of us here. She's smarter than me. She's smarter than any detective here. She's smarter than our chief of police here. She's smarter than all of us. And we're supposed to believe she didn't know what's happening. No, she didn't want him around anymore because he was too much of a problem. You know that's the truth.
She never wanted him dead. She loved him.
That's love to you? Everything that we talked about is love? How? Do you think those things are okay?
No.
Because everybody knows they're not. Except the smartest woman in the room. She's the one person that doesn't know that's not okay? You're joking, right? No. The smartest woman in the room is the one that doesn't know you can't do those things. No, it's all very intentional.
She cared. She never wanted this. We did.
But she sent pictures of him looking dead. Right? Looking almost dead.
Yeah.
That's June 13th. Less than a month ago. You sent this picture to her and you said, he's looking like a skeleton, we need to give him more food. But you guys didn't give him more food over the next couple of weeks. You guys gave him less and more punishment and less bread. And more bread with hot sauce. You sent this to her. And what'd you say? Something along the lines of, no wonder he can barely stand up or walk. Look at that. And your mother, being smart and intelligent and the smartest woman in the room, she gave him less and more punishment. Until what? He ends up dead. And what did she tell the police? He was always wearing baggy clothes, so I didn't notice anything until last night. Another just blatant lie. If this was all an accident, why would you lie to us? Look at his face right there. That's not who your brother looked like, is it?
No.
He didn't look like that. Does that look like it? That looks like somebody in a casket that you see at a funeral. That's what that looks like. And it's sickening and disgusting. This is a dying person. This is your brother dying.
Another thing, she kept setting him up.
Yeah.
And I would come back a little later and I would notice that he actually had moved himself back down. I wasn't sure if it was intentional or if he was trying to clear up his airway maybe.
Well, what is that supposed to mean? Well, he must be okay because he moved a little bit? That's where we're at?
I wasn't
He's
sure.
so far gone that you're like questioning if he moves a little bit, he must be okay? Come on.
I wasn't
sure. Where did that stuff come from? Where did that come from? Didn't your mother send you messages that said, I saw him move? I saw him. Did she send that to you?
Yes.
Then what does that mean to her? That it's fake? Is this fake to you?
No.
Is your brother lying on the floor dead? Is that fake to you?
No.
You know who it didn't matter to at all? You know who I didn't see shed a single tear the whole day I was there? Your mom. You know what I saw a whole bunch of? Fake. Because at the end of the day, your brother gone, that's a problem for her that's gone. Ice bath, hot sauce, handcuffs, closet. He lived in a closet. You said he spent most of his day in a closet, peeing on himself, pooping on himself, eating only bread, sometimes only with hot sauce on it. It's the hottest hot sauce you can get your hands on. That's life. He's probably relieved that he's dead. He's probably relieved because that's torture. He was tortured by you guys for months. Tortured. Why? Because he was different than you guys? Because he couldn't follow directions? Because he couldn't follow your mom's rules? Is that why? He stole food? Is it that big of a deal? Is this food worth killing somebody over? No. That's what happened here. Over stealing food and not following rules. You said that your dad's very controlling. You know who was also very controlling? Your mom's controlling you without you even knowing it. Your mom controlled you and you had no idea. You thought all this stuff you were doing was for your brother. This is going to be better for my brother. This is what's best for my brother. Those are the things you came here saying. Is that real?
I don't know what is or isn't anymore.
It doesn't seem real to me.
Included in this interview is the information that Paul in fact had hit Timothy across the head with an open hand on numerous occasions. And at times, when he was attempting to get the boy to sit in uncomfortable positions in the ice bath, Timothy would shake his head, which would slap the side of the tub. Another time, he remembers dragging Timothy around, and the boy slipped and hit the back of his head on the floor. This is all presented as a possible explanation for a subdural hematoma found on Timothy's brain, and bruises on his head and body. Paul is released back to his home, And on July 11th, about 5 days after his brother's death, he goes live on Facebook to go over what's happening in his life right now.
Hey everybody, just figured I'd send a quick check for y'all, but we're doing good right now. I just dozed off on the couch unintentionally and I forgot to give a quick check for today, but yeah. Oh, when I can't actually get in contact with you guys, I'll probably post a quick check like this. For those of you who aren't aware, my little brother has passed away, and my mother is currently in the custody of, well, I'm not sure if it's a lot to deal with, but right now we're doing good. We're fine, but if I can't actually Facebook you guys live because I don't have my phone and I don't know how to access my stepfathers, I'll post a quick check to let you guys know everything that's going on. If you have any questions or anything, just comment them down below and I'll see if I can answer them in the next quick check. Just keep supporting and pray that the two of us get through this. Well, I gotta go and get back to bed. I'll probably post another quick check tomorrow. So, doodles.
The very next day, Paul is also arrested and charged with first-degree child abuse. Murder charges are not laid against him as he agrees to cooperate in testifying against his mother. Throughout Paul's direct examination, he would outline in detail many of the punishments that were referenced in the text messages. There's too many punishments to go through individually, and the testimony is extensive, but essentially, everything is characterized as though Paul would punish, but never chose to do these things. It was all directed by the orders of his mother, and he thought he was doing what was best for Timothy. He expresses that he was becoming increasingly concerned for his brother's well-being, and even at one point, made a regular meal for Tim, and he didn't tell Shanda that he did this.
So at that point, your brother's very skinny, right? Was he eating regular meals at that point?
No.
Were you still administering the hot sauce on the bread as a form of punishment for him during that time period?
Yes.
And did that continue all the way up until the time of his death?
Yes.
Did he ever eat any normal type of meal leading up to his death after you took that photo and sent it to your mother?
That day I made him an actual real meal, an actual peanut butter and jelly sandwich, as well as scrambled some eggs and put cheese in them.
Did you tell your mother you had made that meal for him?
No, sir.
Why not?
Because I didn't want her to be upset with me.
There's been some testimony already about Timothy going on a hunger strike around the time of Adam's stroke. To your knowledge, did Timothy ever go on a hunger strike when Adam had his stroke?
No, sir.
There's also a reference to him going on another hunger strike about 2 weeks before he passed away. Excuse me, did that happen?
No, sir.
Let's move up to the day before your brother passed away. So you were given some instructions to wake him up in the morning?
Yes.
Was your mother already at work?
Yes.
So your responsibility when you had to go wake him up was what? Just to do what? To get him up?
Just wake him up, which normally wasn't difficult before then.
And this is the day before he passed away, but was it difficult on that day?
Very.
He didn't stand on his own?
He couldn't, no.
Didn't walk on his own? Is that it?
No.
Was he even talking at that point?
No.
Do you know how much time passed from the time that you first became aware he wasn't breathing until 911 was called?
18 minutes?
And during that 18 minutes, did you tell your mother or ask your mother if you were going to call 911?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember what she said?
No. She said no. Sorry, that was my bad.
Before 911 is called, was there some discussion about a hunger strike?
Yes.
What was the discussion about the hunger strike at that point?
Shanda said to say that he'd gone on a hunger strike.
When
And
you say
that we
he, who is
found
she?
him on the bed.
Seems
dead.
obvious, but who is she referring to?
Timothy.
And said that he was found on the bed?
Yes, the bed.
At some point in time, did the police leave you guys alone in the home?
Yes.
Later that night?
Yes.
And when that happened, did Shanda do anything with any of the items in the house?
She disposed of evidence.
What did she dispose of?
Vibration detectors, a camera upstairs that was not confiscated. She broke the memory chip that was inside into 4 pieces and threw them out the window as we were driving to Grandma and Grandpa Vander Ark's. And the vibration alarms were thrown into a trash can, stuffed in a plastic bag and thrown into a trash can at the Chick-fil-A near our house.
As one would expect, the defense go in pretty hard on their cross-examination of Paul. They start out with this deal he struck to potentially not be charged with murder in exchange for his testimony.
You're the one who put the hot sauce in this boy's mouth.
Per her orders, yes.
Timothy's mouth. You're the one who put the cuffs, the bracelets on, the ties on it, right?
Per her orders.
You're the one who put him in the cold baths, correct?
Per her orders.
You're the one who said in one of those texts that you've never wanted to beat somebody up, and I forget the exact word, beat somebody so bad in your entire life. You said that, was that per her orders?
No.
You also said that if something happens, I'm going to kill him. Was that her orders too?
No.
Okay, all right, that's what I'm asking. But you're not charged with first-degree murder, are you?
No.
And you're the one who put him in a bath for 7 hours, 6 hours, whatever it was, the day he died?
Yes, per Shanda's
Okay.
orders.
All right, but you're not charged with first-degree murder, are you?
No.
It's a good deal, isn't it? There was an opportunity to sneak him some food, and you snuck him some food according to your testimony today, right?
Yes.
All right. You work at Applebee's, right?
Yes.
Do they make food at Applebee's?
Yes, unfortunately, I can only get 1 free meal, and I don't always remember my credit card because I don't have it on me.
Okay, this is 6 months. Right?
Yeah?
You never took anything from Applebee's and snuck it home to your brother, did you?
No.
Did you ever go into any place before work or after work to buy your brother a candy bar to bring him home and help him out?
No.
You kept saying during the text, you kept saying, young man, that you were under the impression that what Timothy was going through was an act. Do you remember that?
Because I was convinced by my mother.
Okay. You thought it was an act, correct?
Yes.
You thought he was faking it, correct?
Yes.
The seizures, you thought that was an act?
Yes.
The shaking, you thought that was an act?
Yes, I wasn't there when some of that occurred.
The trembling, that was an act? Did he cry when you had him stand up for hours against the wall? Did he cry?
Not cry, he complained.
When your brother passed away, did you expect that, or were you surprised?
I was surprised, shocked,
Okay.
horrified.
How about your mom when she was in that room? We have that on video a little bit. Do you remember how she responded to that?
Let's see, trying to cover it up?
Do you remember her crying?
Crying? No.
If it's on the video, would that be accurate though? If there's video of her crying, would you deny that's what she's doing?
No.
You remember telling Detective Piesky, if I could take his place right now, if I could give him his life back, I'd do it. I'd do it in a dadgum heartbeat. Do you remember saying that?
I stand by it.
Yes, sir. You never intended your brother to die, did you?
No.
And you came to the conclusion that your mother intended it after, right? Not while he was alive.
Yes.
You thought your mother was a good mom, didn't you? You told Detective Piesky that, didn't you?
Yes. As
And
well
you-
as the fact that I haven't got it diagnosed and I don't know how to explain it.
That's fine.
But I'd say it's something similar to Stockholm Syndrome.
Okay.
I have a desire to find a role model that's, due to my own low self-esteem, I would do anything to make proud of me.
Okay.
And that's not an excuse, I know, but I feel like I'm glad that I was at least able to realize it so I can correct it.
You sent him that text with his shirt off and his pants leg pulled up.
and you say, Mom, you need to feed this guy, something to that effect, right?
Yes.
She says, okay, give him something. She get, I forget what it was.
Bread.
Okay.
Just bread.
Okay. And then after that, did anything change?
No.
Okay.
Because I was too afraid to put my foot down.
You're too afraid? A minute ago, you just want her to be followed.
There's
Now you're
various
afraid?
reasons, and I'm not trying to excuse my own actions.
Well, yes, you are. I disagree. Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. Do you have a cell phone?
Yes.
What happens when you have your cell phone and you press 911?
You're connected to the
There you
cops.
go. Did you know that when you were 19?
Yes.
You did say no to her when she asked you to put hot sauce on his penis.
Yes.
Oh. But you didn't, okay. You weren't scared? You weren't scared to refuse her?
Not at that point.
Do you love Timothy?
I suppose I didn't love him enough.
No,
That's
that's-
why I'm trying to bring justice for him.
Just a moment. Just a moment. I don't know.
But can I say that I loved him during the time
You loved
before
him?
his death?
Yes. Did you love him before his death?
With all the ways I acted, I cannot.
Okay. Let
Unfortunately.
me ask you this. When did you start feeling this way? While he was alive or after you found out that the way he was being treated killed him?
After?
So while the time he was alive, did you think you were killing him?
No.
You told Detective Peiske that we didn't want this. We loved him so much.
That was what I thought, but it's not true.
Shanda would also take the stand in her own defense and attempts to explain to the jury what actually happened, according to her. A side note, through her testimony, her youngest son is referred to as G, or little man. Where I'll begin, Shanda is in the process of talking about what she has been diagnosed with over the course of her life.
Let's run down the list. You had insomnia.
Severe insomnia caused by attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
Okay. And for those folks who get a great night's sleep every night, don't understand what insomnia does to your ability to function, can you explain to them what impact chronic insomnia has on a person?
It limits your ability to think clearly. Your energy level is greatly reduced. Takes a lot longer to process things. You forget things easier. It was much harder to function with so little sleep.
Okay. And you talked about your other personal disorders. Were you seeking medications for those?
I was for, I have severe attention deficit hyperactivity disorder combined type. I also have sensory processing disorder and OCD. And then after my husband's stroke, as a result of my husband's stroke, because I viewed him, I wasn't in the room when he had the stroke, but I was there right afterwards. And so I developed post-traumatic stress disorder with disassociation from that. The only medication that I was on was for the ADHD.
Okay. Issue of food. Was food the only reason why you felt you had to monitor Timothy, or were there other issues?
There were plenty of issues, sir.
So, well first of all, we've heard some testimony as to Timothy's special needs. What were his special needs?
He was on the autism spectrum, but he was completely verbal, and he was grade level in school. He was not behind in school at all. He was diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. He was diagnosed as bipolar and sensory processing disorder. I heard Paul mention physical disability. He didn't have any. Now, Timothy, when he first got there, said he had a physical disability, and I asked his stepmom about it to make sure, and she said no, he was not coordinated at all. The first summer that he lived with us, my youngest was playing baseball, and Timothy actually mentioned, because we had planned to put him in public high school, I'm going to try out for the baseball team, and I didn't say anything to him, but I remember thinking, sorry, sweetie, there's no way, you don't have the coordination for that.
Did he like to take things apart?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Can you give some examples?
He took batteries apart, he took toys apart, my youngest son's toys. If he could get a hold of anything from Paul's room, he would take, mostly it was Legos. Paul still had Legos. He, at one point, messed with our water heater.
What do you mean?
He actually turned the gas off to the water heater.
He knocked out the pilot light and then turned the gas off as well at different points.
Okay. Why did you have all those monitors and cameras in your home?
When Timothy came to live with us, his stepmother informed me that they had motion sensors. They weren't as tech savvy as I was. I worked in tech, before law school, I worked in tech support for several years. But they had motion sensors and she told me that she didn't sleep at night. She only slept when he was at school because he was into everything. And so because my younger child, he used to, when he was about 2, he would take all his clothes off. So we started putting a camera in his room. And then once we moved to the Marshall Road location, it was bi-level. My husband was born with a disability. My husband was wheelchair bound. So we had an extra wheelchair that we kept on the upper level. That's where the master bedroom was. But that way, if G was down in his bedroom, my husband could talk to him through the camera and have him come up. It was much easier. My husband could crawl down the steps before the stroke, but we didn't want him to have to crawl up and down those steps.
Okay. Let's face it, your house is a mess. It's a wreck.
Yes, sir.
Why was that?
I'm not a great person at keeping things clean, and having 3 boys, that contributed. I tried to get their help cleaning up as much as I could, but I just didn't have time or the energy. With the lack of sleep and everything else going on, I barely functioned.
Okay. You admit getting frustrated with your child care efforts with Timothy, is that correct?
Yes, sir. Frustrated, discouraged.
Did you ever intend to hurt him?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
You raised other children, correct?
Yes, I did.
And while Timmy was malnourished, to your knowledge, have any of your other children ever been reported as malnourished?
No, not at all.
As you've likely gathered, Shanda speaks a lot and has multi-layered answers for most of the questions that she's asked. Through her direct examination, there's a baseline of facts established that both her and Paul agree upon. These are that Timothy came to live with them in May of 2021. After January 2022, Adam's stroke, Timothy's behavior would become more difficult to handle as Shanda and Paul were experiencing great pressure, and Timothy would take advantage of that, thus beginning a process of him being regularly punished. Although neither can agree on who decided upon the punishments or their intensity, they both acknowledge that to varying degrees of intensity, Timothy was being punished for behavioral issues. As she's on the stand, essentially, she portrays herself as a struggling single parent, doing her best in a very difficult situation. She was sleep deprived, exhausted, and completely running day by day, trying to make ends meet. It's during this period of time that her focus and judgment lapsed, and she had missed not only how skinny Timothy was becoming, but was also doing her best to discipline him appropriately, according to the problems he was causing. She would allude to the idea that all of the punishments Timothy received, despite sounding quite intense, were actually not as bad as they come across within the context of what was going on. And now that she's on the stand, it's her time to be able to go through all of that and provide explanations to questions that people may have. She's up there for over 3 hours, and I'll do my best to summarize down the key points of her testimony, going through them one by one. To start out, she addresses the accusations that she isolated the boy from the outside world.
Did he ever request to go play, and you denied him?
No, he never did. Actually, Paul, we had, Mom and Dad, my in-laws, got Timothy a bike for his 15th birthday, and Paul and we were on a cul-de-sac, and Paul had tried to teach him to ride the bike.
Okay.
I know they had a few sessions, I don't know how many.
Okay. So on those occasions, he'd be outside.
Oh yeah, he was out in front of the house in the cul-de-sac.
Was it ever your intention to keep people from seeing Timothy?
No, my mother-in-law saw him. We had they do rental home inspections, I guess the city of Norton Shores.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember if it was late April or early May of 2022, but it was in that neighborhood. And so we'd had the inspection that day, and my mother-in-law happened to stop by that day. And I invited her in, we sat and talked, and Timothy wanted to come say hi, so he came up and said hi to her.
Shanda would also address the allegations that she would sit at work and obsessively watch Timothy on the cameras all day, rather than doing her actual job.
Did you sit in front of a monitor and watch the home all the time, or were there times that you could not do that?
Most of the time I couldn't do it.
And why is that?
Because I had work to do. Part of the time I was in court with my judge, and then most of the time I was doing research or doing other tasks that my judge or one of the other judges in the county assigned. So I didn't have time to do that.
Shanda would adamantly hold her ground that she didn't realize how malnourished Tim was. And when asked about the photos that Paul had sent her, where he clearly outlined Tim's emaciation, Shanda would go on to explain that she actually never saw that photo when it was sent to her. At the time, she was in court and using her smartwatch to reply.
I typed on we were in court that day. I actually think I responded, I'm in court. I scribbled out a message real quick back to Paul.
Okay. So did you see the photograph afterwards?
No, I had too many messages on my phone. I don't usually scroll back.
Okay. So how did you know to respond to Paul to say, give him some food?
Because of what he said. He had sent a message saying something.
Okay. So you were able to see the message?
Yes, I saw the, and the picture, I mean, it's this big, but there was pictures, I just couldn't see what it was of.
Okay.
Shanda is then asked to explain what the situation was regarding ice baths, and she would go over the story that there was never really that much ice in the baths at all.
We talked about the ice baths. Some called cold baths and sometimes they were called ice baths. Do you remember that testimony?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The source of the ice, according to the testimony I heard, was your home refrigerator.
No, it was actually a countertop ice maker. The refrigerator did not have an ice maker in it.
Okay. And you didn't go on by the 50-pound bags of ice for the home?
No, I did not.
How much ice are we talking about that tabletop ice maker can?
It actually made about a cup and a half of ice. I had to measure it to use it I made some frappes at times.
Okay.
The basket was maybe this wide, and then underneath was the water, where the water was kept, because that's how it made the ice.
Okay.
And then it took about 2 hours to remake more ice.
Okay.
This now brings us to the issue of the hot sauce.
The question is, whose idea was it to get hot sauce and to administer it to your son?
The idea was originally Paul's.
Okay. And what was the point of the hot sauce?
Because we had tried multiple other discipline methods, and he thought maybe that would get him to stop misbehaving.
Okay.
He suggested it to me, and I was so wrung out, I was willing to try just about anything.
Did you see the label? Did you see the hot sauce itself? Did you order it?
I believe I ordered at least one of the bottles, yes.
Okay. Why did you order this particular hot sauce or these particular hot sauces? What do they have in common?
Because I think it was the same brand, the same one. Because it was hotter than what you could usually get, and because Timothy he liked spicy food.
Okay.
He loved spicy food.
How do you know he liked spicy food?
That actually started before he was ever born. Before I got pregnant with Timothy, I didn't like spicy at all. I mean, nothing, no heat, nothing. And when I got pregnant with him, I started craving, my ex liked spicy foods, but I didn't. And I started craving, I would outspice my ex. It was amazing. I still not to the extent when I was pregnant, but some of that remained. But Timothy, as early as age 2, he could eat a whole bag of the flaming hot Cheetos without a drink. I mean, just he could down. He loved spicy food. It was
okay.
It used to scare the heck out of me.
Did you ever administer any of the hot sauce yourself?
If I remember, I might have done some on bread a couple of times.
Okay.
But usually by the time I got home, that either we were cooking food, I had to cook, or I had Paul cook something so I could feed everybody. But I don't recall. I think I did it on bread once or twice maybe, but that was it.
There's a text out there that says you suggested putting hot sauce on his penis. Do you remember hearing that with the
I remember hearing it, yes.
Do you remember saying those things?
I do not, no sir.
Shanda would actually say she doesn't remember quite a lot, and she does have an explanation for why that is. The reason for memory loss comes out when she is asked about the restraints that were used on Timothy's hands and legs.
There are leg irons discovered in your home. Were you aware of those?
I was aware that Paul had them. You actually could look on my Amazon. Paul had the option to do payment on the Amazon as well as mine, and Paul had actually ordered those under his account.
Okay. You did not order the leg irons?
I did not, no.
Did you ever use them?
No, sir. No, I never instructed.
Let's be in specific. Did you ever use them with Timothy?
No, sir.
Okay. You heard Paul talk about plastic ties. What was that about?
I honestly don't remember.
Okay.
I don't know why we would order. I mean, I saw the ties. I don't remember ordering them. I don't know what happened there.
You're going to say I don't remember a lot, aren't you?
Unfortunately, yes, because of the dissociation.
Okay. Explain to the jury what that means.
Well, I guess there's different forms. Somebody told me this. I did not find out about the PTSD and the disassociation until about 7 months after my husband's stroke, even though it had been going on since the stroke.
I need to place an objection on the record, and I think we're going to have to excuse the jury.
It would appear that the defense was going to try and get her to explain her lapses in memory using this disassociation theory, but the prosecutor swiftly objects due to her not having been diagnosed with any such disorder before or after Timothy's death. She states that she can't remember a lot of what happened in the 6 months leading up to Timothy's death, but she didn't speak to any doctors regarding this, even though she had ample opportunity to do so. The state has a major problem with this. Her claims that she suffers from memory loss due to disassociation comes exclusively from her and not a professional. Because of this, the state does not want this sort of testimony coming in for the jury to hear. The argument is lengthy, but I did find it to be rather interesting, so here's a few excerpts from it now.
If she wants to say she just can't remember, I guess she can just say she can't remember, but she doesn't get to use the excuse that this is disassociation. Furthermore, I have a doctor still on standby as a potential rebuttal witness who did examine Ms. Vander Ark. It's the report from the Forensic Center, which Mr. Johnson has, which essentially debunks this entire disassociation myth that she doesn't remember things or chooses not to remember things because of some disassociation.
If she were a drunk and she said, I can't remember because I was drunk that night, we would allow that in. If she said, I can't remember because of this association thing, then that should be allowable. It doesn't rise to a legal defense. It doesn't rise to a argument of insanity. What it does is an explanation simply of what she did next. Why did you do this? Why did you do that? Why don't you remember these things? That's what this explains.
If that is going to be the testimony and disassociation is the defense, then I want the doctor here that examined her and diagnosed her with having disassociation so she can conveniently forget the horrible things that happened in this case. It's all hearsay. It's not the same thing as intoxication.
So, Mr. Johnson, I think, you're going to ask her if she doesn't remember, assuming she's going to answer no. Well, why don't you not remember? She's going to say, well, because I have this dissociation disorder, right? I think you'd have to lay the foundation for that testimony. And the foundation for that testimony would be hearsay, would be from some other source. She's obviously not a doctor. She can't self-diagnose herself. She's not been admitted as an expert, so she can, as a layperson, testify to what she feels and those things rationally based upon her feelings and what she sees and understands. So I don't think it's an objection that she can say, I don't remember. Why don't you remember? Well, because, I black out. Now, your example was drunk driving. Well, a layperson can say, hey, listen, in my experience, when I drink 8 beers, I, stumble. I can't really remember, those kind of things. And it's rationally based on her perception. And she can describe those things that are happening to her. I think that's fair. But in order to say, yes, that is exactly dissociation disorder or this, there's got to be a foundation laid for that. So objection is sustained.
Do you understand? We can't talk about disassociation. We can't use that term.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Starting right after my husband's stroke, I started experiencing episodes where if you've ever passed out, like the world closed, you get tunnel vision and the world closes in on you until you completely black out. It felt like I was blacking out, but I didn't actually pass out. And the events that happened after that, I have no idea of what happened. I don't remember it. I don't know.
Okay.
And this happened anytime I got even a little stressed.
So you're understanding, you're under oath right now, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you're asked to tell the truth right now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we're asking you that you not guess at anything?
Correct.
Okay. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
So if you don't understand, we need to say you don't remember, we need to say those things.
Correct.
Okay.
We're moving closer to the end of Shanda's direct examination, and as we do so, she would be pressed on the details surrounding the day she found Timothy. Why did she lie to police about a range of details?
Once you discovered that Timothy had passed, and once the police get there, do you tell them the truth?
I was so freaked out. I'm sorry. Honestly, I've got one. I'm sorry. Thank you.
You're welcome. Why didn't you tell them the truth? Why were you so freaked?
I don't remember what my line of thinking was at the time. I was so I don't know. I wish I had an answer for you, but I don't.
Were you tired at that point?
I was exhausted. The night before he passed, I had less than an hour of sleep.
Were you frightened at that point?
Absolutely. I just lost my son.
You need a moment?
I'm okay.
Okay. But there's an indication that it took you a while to call the police. In fact, you told Paul not to, according to Paul's testimony. Why did it take you so long? He said 18 minutes out. Why did it take you so long to call the police?
I have no idea, honestly. I'm trying to figure out how to describe it. It was surreal. Like you don't even know what's going on. Time slowed down and.
We've all seen pictures of Timothy at the time of his death. How could you not know he was that ill? How could you not know?
Honestly, I was barely functioning. I missed a lot. I hate it because, I feel like a complete failure, but there was things that I just didn't see. There was a lot that I didn't see, unfortunately.
Did you intend to hurt Timothy?
No, never.
Did you know he was being hurt?
No, I didn't, unfortunately.
The tactics that you used to discipline Timothy, did they seem extreme or outrageous to you at the time?
No.
You'll admit the bath was not warm on the day he died. It was a cold bath.
Correct, the day before.
It wasn't an ice bath though, correct?
I
Sorry,
wasn't.
you know.
From the text, it looks like he did, but that wasn't what was said to do.
Okay.
Paul chose to do the ice on his own. If you look at the text.
Okay. There's testimony that he remained in that tub for hours. Were you aware of that?
No, I didn't realize he was in the tub. No.
When you came home, you didn't realize he was in the tub?
I did when I got home. I actually ran him a warm bath when I got home.
Okay. Where?
In the tub downstairs.
There's a bunch of stuff in there talk about make sure he doesn't sleep, make sure he doesn't sleep. What's that about?
There was a couple of situations where Timothy actually intentionally kept everybody in the house awake. He would intentionally set off the motion sensors. He would make noise. With the house being a bi-level, you could hear a lot from the downstairs. But he intentionally kept everybody awake.
Okay.
And so that was, okay, if you're going to keep us awake, then you have to stay awake.
The text, on occasion, Paul would have say things that suggest aggressions towards Timothy on occasion. Did you know any other circumstances other than what's in those situations in the text?
Oh, absolutely. He never displayed that towards my youngest. He never displayed that towards my husband when he was still at home or myself. He would get aggressive when he was playing games. He would get really angry. He had some serious anger issues. And then when Timothy moved up, and Timothy did push his buttons some, but he never reacted well. He just overreacted to Timothy every time. He hardly ever reacted rationally to Timothy.
What was the incident that caused you to put locks on the fridge?
I had just purchased a 2-pound bag of frozen chicken nuggets and put it in the freezer. And overnight, I guess he got around the motion sensors. But the next day, it was a weekend, and the next day I went to, little man asked for some chicken nuggets. And I went to get them, and the bag was empty in the freezer. And I was like, what? We hadn't touched it. And so I started asking, and at first Timothy lied to me. He said he didn't touch it. And then I went and checked with little man and with Paul, and nobody had touched so I went back because I had issues with both Paul and Timothy lying to me a lot. So I went back to Timothy. I said, nobody else has touched this. He said, I ate them. I said, okay, did you cook them? He said, no, he ate the whole 2-pound bag frozen, uncooked chicken.
All right. Were you concerned about his health and getting into and eating frozen food?
Yes, and he ate, there was a time where he ate uncooked bacon out of the fridge before the chicken nugget incident. He ate a whole pound of uncooked ground beef at one point. This was all after the stroke when there was less people to keep an eye on.
Did it occur to you he's doing those things because he's hungry, he's starving?
No, there was plenty of food. There was no issues. He never told me he was hungry at the time when these incidents happened.
If you're concerned about him eating frozen food, why would you offer him 2 frozen pizza rolls?
Because the chicken was uncooked and it's dangerous. That actually, I had a panic attack when he did the chicken. It was terrifying. I broke down completely.
So the nuggets were uncooked chicken?
Yes, it's uncooked chicken. That could have killed him.
Okay.
It freaked me out.
He was rail thin. How did you not notice?
I wish I hadn't answered that. Part of it, he actually, from the time of the stroke, because my husband's stroke was January 3rd of 2022, so most of this was cold weather. Part of it was he wore big clothes, he wore hoodies. The clothes that were sent to him from his dad and stepmom, most of the pants didn't fit him well to begin with. And I had gotten him a couple of pairs of jeans, but I couldn't afford a lot. He didn't want anything to do with me, hardly at all.
Yeah, but when you put your arms around him to hug your son.
He didn't want hugged. He was 15. He didn't want.
With direct examination wrapping up, I could imagine the prosecutor was bursting at the seams to begin his cross. Strap yourselves in, because it is a bit of a long ride. But as always, I'll do my best to break it down and show you the most impactful highlights from what was an extensive and detailed cross-examination.
Remind the jury again of your educational background.
I have a Bachelor of Science degree, magna cum laude, and then I also have a Juris Doctorate. It's a law degree that I graduated magna cum laude, second in my class.
And magna cum laude, for those that might not be familiar, means with the highest honors, correct?
Yes, sir. In law school, actually, Summa only goes to number one. At the college level, it's above a certain GPA, but for law school, only number one gets Summa, and then above a certain GPA gets magna.
And you took the bar exam.
I did.
Passed the bar exam.
First try, yes, sir.
With a very high score, right?
Yes, sir.
What was that score?
182 out of 200.
Bar exam is an incredibly difficult test to pass, isn't it?
Yes, sir, it is. It was like 400 hours of study that went into that.
And the pass rate for it usually hovers somewhere around 60%. So 4 out of 10 people that take it usually fail, right?
I did not know that, but I'll take your word for it.
Okay. But you understood it to be a very difficult test when you took it.
Yes.
And I believe that score would constitute the highest score for that time that you took the bar, right? Your score.
I don't know. I would assume so.
Let's talk about some of your health issues, because you listed quite a few issues. I think you said ADHD, something called sensory processing disorder,
OCD.
Those
PTSD.
I guess I would kind of classify those more as almost. I don't want to use. I'm not using this word in a negative context, because those are almost more mental disorders. Would you
Yes, sir.
agree with
Yes,
that?
sir. No, I agree with that.
Right. You also had some physical disabilities as well.
Yes, sir.
And I don't know if Mr. Johnson went into those, so why don't
He
you
didn't.
tell the jury what your physical disorders are as well?
I have allergy-induced asthma. I am allergic to almost everything environmental other than animals, every different type of pollen and mold and weeds. And then I am a reactive hypoglycemic. I have been my whole life, but it was actually after Timothy was born. It got much worse.
And you suffer from a disorder which causes you to become overstimulated with, audio and visual stimuli, correct?
That's part of it, yes, sir. It can be stress-related as well.
But as a punishment for your child, you decided that hot sauce, audio alarms, cold, we'll get into this later, but at least cold, if not ice baths, and isolation and sensory deprivation were appropriate means of punishment. Is that your testimony? Those
Yes,
were
sir.
appropriate forms of punishment?
For some of it, yes, sir.
You also train service animals, correct?
I do.
And when you train service animals, is crate training involved at all?
Yes, it is usually.
And explain what crate training is to a jury.
It depends on what you're using it for. Usually it's part of house training to begin with. And when the service animal in training is very young, you don't get to take them with you 24/7. So you don't want to leave them unattended a lot of times. Plus, putting a dog in a crate, a lot of times that's comforting to them. They like the more enclosed space. So it keeps them contained, keeps them from being destructive, and it teaches them, like for house training, it'll teach them not to do anything in their house, basically, where you take them outside and where they do their business.
Timothy's small room, that was basically like a crate, wasn't it?
I don't believe it was that enclosed, but he asked for a space that he could close the door.
He asked to go into that?
He asked for a space. He asked for somewhere he could, some place he can go in and close the door. And it was actually half joking. I was like, "That's all I've got," because the other rooms were taken, and there was no way he was sharing with Paul, and I didn't really want him sharing with little man either.
But you didn't set that up as a room for him, did you?
Not originally, no. He was actually out in the lower area for a while.
But you didn't put a bed in there, you didn't put
We
a
did
mattress
originally,
in
yes.
there?
He tore it up.
Okay, but there was no mattress, nothing of comfort for there in him the day before he died, was there?
Not that day, no. He had torn it up. I couldn't afford to get another one.
You put a blue tarp in there, didn't you?
That was what was on the mattress previously, yes.
And the tarp was because he would wet himself.
Yes, sir. Because I tried the mattress covers, I tried plastic, I tried some of the rewashable, and he kept tearing them up.
So his place of comfort was a closet with a blue tarp. Is that what you want the jury to believe?
He spent some time there.
In fact, he rarely even slept on his bed, did he?
He had taken the bed apart and lost some of the bolts. It wasn't safe for him to sleep up there.
So the bed that we see on those pictures, it wasn't even safe to be used?
No.
So it was a complete lie when you told the police officers that you had to pull him off the bed, to put him on the ground to do CPR, wasn't it?
Yes.
And it was a complete lie when you told 911, I need to put you on hold so I can take him off the bed to perform CPR, wasn't it?
Yes, sir. I don't even remember.
So in all your days, all your confusion, all your blacking out, tunnel vision, all that, you were able to somehow remember. I ought to tell everybody that Timothy was sleeping on a bed. Remember doing that?
Vaguely, yes, sir.
So it never occurred to you to use hot sauce, enforcing the use of hot sauce on a dog, but it occurred to you to use that as a form of punishment for your 14-year-old child?
It was Paul's idea, but yes, I was at my wit's end at that time.
It was Paul's idea, and you thought, yep, that sounds like a good idea. I think we'll do that. Is that what you're saying?
I don't remember the exact conversation, but I said, like I said, at that point I was willing to try anything.
We'll get into the text, but there's dozens of texts in here, and this is just a small section of text where you tell Paul, put more hot sauce on the bread, give him 4 slices of hot sauce. Do you remember those text messages?
Some of them, not very many, but some of them.
Mm-hmm. So you wouldn't punish a dog with hot sauce, but it's okay to punish a child with it.
Objection, Your Honor. That's
I'll move on.
okay.
Would you stick a dog in an ice bath as punishment?
That would never occur to me. But then having big dogs, I don't bathe them at home anyway.
I'm not talking about giving them a bath. I'm talking about using
I don't have
as
space.
a form of punishment, putting a dog in an ice bath.
I don't have space to do that, so I wouldn't think of that because I don't have space with that size dog.
You're saying if you had a large enough tub to punish one of the dogs, you'd put him in an ice bath?
I can't imagine doing that, but
You can't imagine doing that.
it's not
Okay.
the way I think, so.
I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but you said you wouldn't do it for a dog, but we know you did it as a punishment for Timothy.
I never did personally.
But you told Paul to do it.
Yes. A couple of times.
And it never occurred to you, this is not a good idea. We shouldn't be doing this, right?
No, because it was the amount of ice was almost, it was non-existent, so.
So it's okay as long as it's not a lot of ice in the ice bath? Is that your testimony?
If it doesn't affect the temperature much. Because the first time that happened was before my husband's stroke. It was, Timothy had, we noticed there was no hot water. And we were like, what the heck? And I went down and I'm looking and I noticed the pilot light's not on the water, it's a gas water heater. I'm like, what on earth is going on?
This ends with Timothy turning off the gas, doesn't it?
Yes, sir.
This part of the story, okay.
And he lied about it for 2 days, but.
Let me just make sure I understand then. Is it your testimony that you put ice in an otherwise hot bath to cool it down?
Yes.
Why don't you just start with warm water to begin with?
I honestly don't know. But that's what happened the first time.
You apparently needed ice to cool down a hot.
I have no idea what I was thinking. We'd all had to have cold showers for 2 days, and he'd lied to us about the water heater. I'd had to have the gas company out.
You remember taking the law school exam test?
The LSAT? Yes. Yeah. Oh, I hated that test.
Oh, I did too. Yeah, I agree with you there. There's a section on there that's about logic and reasoning, right?
Yes, sir.
Logic told you that you should use ice in a hot bath. Is that your testimony?
Yes, sir.
You said that you would, the punishments, and I guess this 3 o'clock in the morning one about not letting him sleep or he gets an ice bath, so he's got to be awake at 3 o'clock in the morning. You said that was because he would keep you guys up in the middle of the night or wake you up in the middle of the night?
Yes. Yes, sir.
And again, you did really well on the logic and reasoning portion of the LSAT exam. Can you explain the reasoning behind keeping somebody awake when they're keeping you awake?
To show them how it feels.
But they're already awake, aren't they?
It made sense to me, sir. Now that you ask it, but it doesn't seem to make sense, but it made sense to me at the time.
You didn't actually mean that as punishment. That was just out of spite. You were just angry with Timothy for keeping you awake, weren't you?
No, it was meant as a punishment, sir.
It's rather unusual the way this question was answered by you. She said there was one time that your mother-in-law saw Timothy.
Yes, sir.
One time.
Yes, sir.
Just the once.
After the stroke, yes, sir.
Just once in 6 months was the only time.
As far as I remember, yes, sir. That's what I believe.
In fact, you went to great lengths to make sure that the grandmother, that's Grammy, that's the person you referred to as Grammy, right? Your mother-in-law. You went to great lengths to make sure that she wasn't allowed in your home, didn't you?
I mean, that was just because the house was a mess.
4044.
Grammy left home about 10 minutes ago. Hopefully she will not beat me there this time. She is almost there. Are y'all outside? I would like a response to that message. And Grammy may just beat me there again, which doesn't make me happy, but anyway. If she does, do not let her in the house this time.
So that's 3 text exchange all within a couple of weeks of each other where you are absolutely consistent that the boy's grandmother's, G's grandmother, not come into the house. Right?
Yes, sir.
To the point where you're tracking her phone while you're driving home from work. Right?
Yes, sir. I only tracked it when I was stopped. I wouldn't do that while I was driving, but...
I put the cuffs back behind him. That's your text message.
Yes, sir.
So you use handcuffs on Timothy.
I don't remember, honestly.
You don't remember using?
No, sir. I don't remember sending either one of these texts, sir.
Don't remember sending either one of those?
No, sir, I don't.
You want to revise your earlier answer to the question when you said that you would have said, oh, no, don't use zip cuffs on Timothy.
I don't recall that, sir. I'm sorry.
Don't recall that either? Huh?
No, sir.
And then you can wait 30 minutes and then you can have some without hot sauce on it. You read that one, right?
Yes, sir.
But again, you don't remember sending that text message.
No, sir.
But aliens didn't take a hold of your phone and take over your body or anything like that, did they?
No, sir.
No. So cold, rainy, yep, go run stairs outside. What was the awful crime you had done to warrant doing that?
I don't remember, sir. I would think so. I don't remember that. I mean, if that's what was... I don't remember. I don't remember, honestly.
Is that the I don't know as well? You don't remember that one either?
Between the time of the stroke and Timothy's passing, I don't remember a heck of a lot.
You don't remember sending these text messages?
No, sir.
No memory from this time period?
No, sir.
Because of all the blackouts, all the tunnel vision, all the PTSD, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you can't remember all of these text messages about the ice baths and the hot sauce and the zip ties and the handcuffs, but you remember over 18 months ago that your son weighed 108 pounds sometime after Mother's Day of 2022, correct?
104, yes, sir.
104.
Well,
you got it down. You're right. 104 pounds.
Well, he made a comment that just things like that will stick out to me sometimes. I know the reason I know it was after Mother's Day is because Mom, my mother-in-law, for probably the last 4 or 5 years, as a Mother's Day gift, has given me cherry tomato plants and then miniature cucumber plants, and I keep them in like plant bags. I normally have a black thumb, I admit it, but I've managed to keep these alive pretty well. And I had just, when I came upstairs to weigh the dog, I had just gone downstairs and checked on my plants. So the plants were outside then, so I know it was after Mother's Day, I just don't know when.
Plants never missed a feeding then, did they?
Objection, Your Honor.
I don't remember, I don't remember, apparently I didn't. I mean, I hear what you're saying, I don't remember saying it, but I don't remember, sir. I don't remember, sir.
You've heard it read several times.
Yes,
You're not
sir.
doubting that's what it says, right?
Yes, sir.
Just another one of those memories that you just gone from your head, right?
Yes, sir.
Why'd you send that text message?
I don't know.
Don't remember that one either?
No, sir. If that's what it shows, sir, I don't remember. If that's what it shows, I don't remember any of this.
And did you tell him you don't need to open your mouth every time you breathe, dummy, and then hold his mouth shut?
I don't know what I said, sir. I mean, I'll take your word for that's what the video
Oh, you don't have to
shows.
take my word for it. Let's play the video for it.
Sir, that's not necessary. That's what you're saying it shows. I believe you. I mean, I don't know what happened in that situation. I don't remember, sir.
Don't remember that one, okay?
I have no idea, sir. I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking. I mean,
Right.
if that's what it says, I don't.
The reason he wasn't allowed to sleep was because he would keep you guys awake?
I actually do remember that. Timothy asked if he could trade off not getting to sleep for something else, and I had him doing chores.
You remember what your response was?
I don't remember. I heard it the other day, but I don't remember sending that.
Go try to make him throw up, please. That was your response, wasn't it?
If that's what it says.
Don't remember?
No,
I'm gonna
sir.
put that one in the don't remember category?
Like I said, unfortunately, between January and the time he passed away, I don't have a lot of memories in general of Gabriel, of G, of Timothy, of Paul. I know that there's times that I went over to my in-laws' house and there's I don't remember a lot of that. It's not just this.
Okay.
I don't remember that.
You don't remember that message?
No, sir, I don't.
You really do have some memory problems, don't you?
Yes, sir. That's common with PTSD.
You only got to go to the bathroom for 1 minute or 2 minutes, depending on what he had to do?
I don't remember. I don't remember ever enforcing that, but obviously I sent it. I don't remember the Tabasco because I never called it. I said Tabasco.
So, Tabasco in the mouth and make him swallow, and lots of it, and do it every 30 minutes until you leave.
I don't remember that being a part of it. I remember part of the conversation, but I don't remember that part of it.
So his punishment for having an accident was that he had to do chores without pants and underwear on, right?
If that's what it says, I don't remember this.
That's pretty humiliating, isn't it?
I mean, he was by himself. It wasn't. I would never. I mean, I don't remember this at all, sir.
You don't remember that at all?
I mean, if that's what it says, I don't remember this.
Please make sure G does not go downstairs at all. Don't remember that either.
No, sir.
You told Paul to heat up some pizza rolls because G needed the pizza rolls anyway, right? You remember that?
Yes, sir.
You remember
I
this?
don't remember the text message.
Don't
but
remember. So this falls in the I don't remember category as well. Is that right?
Like most of it. I can pretty much guarantee I don't remember most of that either. I don't. And it's not just my text with Paul.
You don't remember anything.
No, sir, I don't.
But somehow you were able to hold down a job as a judicial clerk during that time period, right?
Yes, sir.
But somehow you can remember when the police ask you about the leg irons and the cuffs, you say those were for Paul for a TikTok video, right?
I think that's what I told
That's
him.
what you told the police?
Yes.
So you don't remember things, but you have the wherewithal to make it look like, no, those don't involve Timothy, those were Paul's. It's pretty self-serving, isn't it?
Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative.
I'll withdraw the last part. You had the wherewithal to say that the cuffs that they found belonged to Paul when your text message indicates they were actually for Timothy, right?
Apparently, yes, sir.
Let's go ahead and read the exchange there. Starting with the message that Paul sent to you with the photograph.
Timothy tried to sneak food. I yelled at him, and then he became momentarily unresponsive, and then I saw this. He's bone thin, Mama. I think we need to actually feed him.
Okay. And what's your response to that?
I said, Kay, give him bread, please. And then I said, I hear you, give PB sandwiches and water. You want me to keep going?
Yeah.
Okay, the unresponsiveness is probably fake, but I see what you mean.
So is it really your testimony that you never saw that photograph?
I do not recall seeing it. That was it. I feel like I want to throw up.
You don't recall seeing the photograph, right?
No, sir.
The unresponsiveness is probably fake, but I see what you mean. You literally use the word see in your text message about see what you mean. But your testimony today is, I didn't look at the photograph. I didn't see the photograph.
Yes, sir. It's a phrase that you use.
So he's refusing to eat food not long after your husband has a stroke, right?
Yes, sir.
Then you don't need to put locks on the refrigerator and the freezer, do you? If he's refusing to eat.
He stopped. He started eating again.
He started eating again, so then you decided he's been on a hunger strike, he's eating again, so now we better lock up the food.
No, I did the locks to protect him because he could have killed himself eating the chicken nuggets. I didn't put the locks on after he did the hamburger or the bacon, but the chicken nuggets, it was raw chicken.
Chicken nuggets are cooked, aren't they? They're pre-cooked.
Are they? I didn't even think about that.
He keeps pulling his arms down, and that doesn't set off the camera alarm, so please watch him for that. Well, why did he have his arms up?
He was standing against the wall with his arms on his head.
So he'd have to do that for long periods of time, right?
Stand there, but he didn't have to have his arms up the whole time, but I'd set a time limit on how long he had to have his arms up.
And you're watching or watching an alarm to make sure his arm doesn't go down, right?
From the sound of it. I was trying to teach him not to sneak. He snuck. It wasn't just food. He would sneak in the garage. He would sneak toys. He snuck around and messed with his baby brother's homeschooling materials. I've got like flashcards and stuff for him. He messed with those and got them all out of order.
He was deceitful and sneaky a lot, wasn't he?
Yes, sir, he was.
Did it ever occur to you it's because he was hungry?
He was that way well before there was issues, well before the stroke. I mean, we always had issues with him over that. His stepmom warned me about that.
Well before you said well before the issues. What issues?
Before his first hunger strike, before any of this, he was extremely sneaky.
Did it ever occur to you that this is not the way to deal with a person who's been on a hunger strike? April 27th, Timothy is no longer allowed anywhere near the fridge, freezer, or pantry, or any other place where food is. And again, your response to all of this, rather than to seek some professional help for him, because of these eating issues that he apparently has, is to restrict even further his access to food, right? And then watch his every move on a camera or with a motion sensor or with an alarm, right?
My response was to try to prevent him from being deceitful and sneaky.
But warn him that I will count how many times he moves his arm from the camera, picking it up, and he will be doing stairs for that tomorrow. He's not sneaking around there, is he?
No, he was up against the wall and he was supposed to have his arms on his head for a certain amount of time.
Okay, so at 11 o'clock at night, he's supposed to be up against the wall, and you want to make sure that he knows you're going to know how many times he moves his arm, and if it's not satisfactory, he gets to do stairs for that the next day.
Yes, sir, apparently.
April 29th. What did he eat? I ate my burger already. Paul's response, he ate the crust. So the crime he committed here, just so we're clear, wasn't sneaking frozen chicken nuggets or a bag of chips. It was eating the crust of what sounds to be an already half-eaten burger or an eaten burger. And your response to that is, go make him throw up, please.
If that's what it says, and the crime was, again, it's being sneaky and deceitful. It was never about it wasn't about the food. It was because he every time we turned around, he was sneaking something. It wasn't just food. He snuck toys. Like I said, he snuck batteries.
Doesn't that strike you as, with everything else that happens, it's just cruel and unusual to tell a child, heck, to tell anybody, that you only get a certain amount of time in the bathroom? That doesn't strike you as cruel?
Object to this being argumentative.
It's not argumentative.
It certainly is. It's argumentative. She can answer the question, but certainly the way it's phrased is an argument.
Well, I want my question answered. Is it cruel to make a child go to the bathroom on a timer?
Yes, sir.
And the hot sauce started as Paul's idea?
Yes, sir.
How do you come up with the idea to do hot sauce if Timothy likes hot sauce?
Well, he said that I guess he'd read something, if I remember correctly.
How is that even a punishment if he likes hot sauce? He never liked eating the hot sauce, did he?
Huh? Yes, he did. He ate spicy food.
You heard Paul's testimony yesterday.
I did.
And you heard him say that he never wanted to eat those slices of bread with the hot sauce on it, didn't you? You heard that testimony.
That's what I heard him say, yes.
And your response to that in a lot of these text messages was make sure you use even more hot sauce than you did before, right?
If that's what you say the text messages say. I wonder how it would feel to have that hot sauce on your private parts. I'm not saying touch him there, not at all, but dripping a little bit there, is that horrible?
Did you have to ask that question?
I wouldn't think so. I don't remember that. I can't even imagine saying that.
But you did.
I know, but I can't even imagine it.
About your child, right? Who at that point was in the middle of an ice bath that had lasted at least 2.5 hours at that point, right?
If that's what it says, I'm not arguing that. I'm not trying to argue that. I'm just saying I don't know.
It just popped in your head today. Yeah, I wonder what hot sauce on your private parts would be like.
I have no idea where it came from. I have no idea.
Did you ever try that hot sauce?
No, I don't like food as spicy as Timothy.
Okay.
About the hottest I can handle is jalapeno cheddar Cheetos.
I'm with you there. I can't handle hot sauce either. So you never even, but administering it as a punishment multiple times, you thought was okay without even trying it yourself first.
Yes, I have a very weak stomach, and so I didn't want to throw up.
You made him do wall sits?
One time, and that was Paul's suggestion as well. He said, "Oh, this used to drive me crazy." I guess he said that Paul said that his dad and stepmom had used that as a punishment with him, and so we decided to give it a try. And Timothy could have cared less.
He what? He could not have cared less?
No.
So being made to stand as if there's no support under your legs, he was okay to do that?
I mean,
how long did you have him do it for?
A couple of minutes.
A couple of minutes?
Yes, sir.
When was that?
I don't remember, honestly.
You testified that you gave Timothy a warm bath the night before he passed away, that last night, July 5th. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
That was the first time you've told anybody connected to this case that you'd done that, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
You never told the police officers you did that, did you?
No, sir.
And I imagine a warm bath sounds just like, it's just what it sounds like, right? You got him, you took him to the bath, you drew a warm bath for him, and you put him in the bathtub, right?
Yes, sir.
This is hours before he dies, right?
Yes, sir.
You look like that when you put him in the bathtub?
sorry. It's,
Gotta make me a moment.
You just obviously had quite a visual reaction there to the jury, a physical reaction in front of the jury looking at those photographs. That's not the first time you've seen these photographs, though, is it?
no, sir.
In fact, you sat in this very courtroom not even a week ago on Friday when we had a hearing about those photographs and looked at those photographs, didn't
I
you?
did not look at them last week, sir.
You didn't look at them last week?
No, sir, I did not.
But you've looked at them before, haven't you?
It was, I think it was at the prelim, and I gagged that day too. It just wasn't as bad.
Didn't throw up, though.
No, it wasn't as bad.
So if there's video from that hearing that we had last week where you thumbed through the photographs, including the autopsy photos, without vomiting, do you just not remember that as well?
We didn't have the autopsy, we didn't have those photos over at our table, sir.
Those 3 photographs depict your son hours after you supposedly put him in a warm bath. Did he look like that when you put him in the warm bath, but for the fact that he was alive?
I did not look at him, sir. He was 15. I tried to give him his privacy. It may sound lame, but I intentionally look away. That's why Paul did most of his baths, is because he's 15 and I didn't think that was appropriate. I'm not.
So you're acknowledging that the night before Timothy died, hours before he died, you dragged him, looking like that, back into his small room, positioned him in front of a camera, told him he owed you an apology, then came back later because he rolled over away from the camera and held his mouth closed and said, see, you don't have to open your mouth when you breathe, dummy? You're acknowledging you did those things.
If that's what the camera shows, yes, sir.
You didn't put him in a warm bath that night, did you?
Yes, sir, I did.
But you had to drag him away from it?
If that's what it says, I don't. I know that I know he had a hoodie on.
You realized how skinny he was the night before and threatened to take him to the ER if he didn't eat. That's not true, is it?
No, sir.
And you didn't make him a piece of toast and give it to him and make him eat it, did you?
No, sir. I have no idea why I said that. I was traumatized. I actually didn't come out of the first month I was in jail. It was. I wish the Lydia that used to work for the public defender's office visited me, and she said it was pretty obvious that I was under severe trauma.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't eat for my first month.
Ms. Vander Ark, isn't it true? Timothy had just become nothing more than an annoyance for you, and he wasn't even a human being in your eyes anymore.
That is absolutely not true.
Following her testimony, Shanda has an unexpected medical emergency involving anxiety and panic attacks, and she could no longer be present to sit in the courtroom for the rest of her trial. Closing statements would finalize the 3-day trial, with both sides acknowledging how horrific this was. The state focuses on the fact that Shanda was highly intelligent and knew exactly what she was doing, whereas the defense say she had no idea that she was harming her son.
It does not make any sense that a 15-year-old should be made to suffer the way Timothy was. To be made a prisoner the way Timothy was. And make no mistake, he was a prisoner in that home. We give prisoners rights. Prisoners of war have rights. Timothy had none of those. What did he do? What is it that he was doing? Apparently so desperate for food that he ate frozen chicken nuggets and uncooked hamburger. Explain this to the jury so they can understand, so they can make sense of why it was that you chose to do these things to him. And she got mad at the end, towards the end of her testimony. It became clear that she was still mad at Timothy. He was sneaky and deceitful. Over and over again, he was sneaky and deceitful. Who do we know was sneaky and deceitful here? The defendant. And it started when, after 18 minutes of her son being unresponsive and so obviously deceased, she finally decides to call 911. But she better get her story straight before we call 911. So what's the last thing she says before she calls 911 to Paul? We'll have to tell him he's been on a hunger strike. She got ready for work in the morning and went to check on him. No, that's not true. But it's interesting that she mentions getting ready for work, because on that video you can hear her, and she's been working on Timothy for a number of minutes at this point in time. And she says, well, I guess I'm going to be late for work, but we've got to get him responsive. Talk about cold. I guess I'm going to be late for work. Your child is dead, and all you can think about is being late for work? There isn't a single text message in here, or in there, the larger binder, where she says, what are we doing? I don't understand why we're doing these things. Why are these things happening? Why is Timothy on a camera? Why is Timothy in handcuffs? Why is Timothy locked away in a small room? If she has all these memory issues, where are those text messages? Where are the memory issues in here? Can't say it any more blunt than she does. She was not going to let Timothy win. Plain and simple. And if that many died, then many died. He dies, she kicks into survival mode, and starts to lie to the police. Timothy was too much for her. And as a result, she decided she wasn't going to lose this fight. Timothy was too much for her to handle, but she was going to win. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now up to you to send a message to her that she lost this fight. Thank you.
It is my argument. The argument we've made from the very beginning is that while part of her knew she was punishing this boy, none of her knew that she was hurting him. I understand. There's two possibilities. One, she's exactly what Mr. Roberts said, and that's evil. That's evil. Or the other possibility is there's something going on and she doesn't understand. She didn't understand, despite all the intelligence, she didn't understand the ultimate consequences of those individual acts of punishment. The accumulated force and power and weight of those individual acts of punishment. She didn't understand it. She didn't see it. I don't know how that could be. But to be honest with you, that's what makes sense. All the texts that you've written do not tell you the whole story of your life. It tells you what they refer to at that moment, and that's it. And the rest has to be inferred. And if someone comes along and takes it out of context, and takes it out of circumstances, and it takes it out of where it existed at the time you sent it, you have a different story than what was intended. The communication you're getting is different than what you intended. She took this child in when she wasn't supposed to have him, because there was no other choice. So she did it. She raised another child. Paul has special. Paul's 20 years old and living at home with mom and working minimum wage. This is what Paul's doing. She has other child, and she has the demands of judges and lawyers, and she has the demands of education and the demands of ambitions, and her husband gets a stroke. These all make a difference. That's what I'm talking about, context. Give him 4 slices of bread with hot sauce on it. Doesn't talk about, she's thinking about her husband. The impact is how she's going to pay the rent. How she's going to get to work tomorrow. There's no gas in the car. These are all things that are going. There isn't a situation where she's sitting there just thinking about this one problem. She has too many problems to think about one. She's thinking about them all at a time. And pressure busts a pipe. It was too much. She didn't hate her child. That's what it would have taken to knowingly do this to your child. She would have to hate him. These people committed manslaughter. That's what they did. They caused this boy's death, but they didn't intend to. That's simply it.
Count 1, charging open murder involving the death of Timothy Ferguson. We find her guilty of first-degree felony murder. Count 2, first-degree child abuse. We find her guilty of first-degree child abuse.
All right, thank you.
After Shanda is found guilty on both charges, Paul pleads guilty to first-degree child abuse and does manage to avoid a charge of murder. Leading up to his sentencing, a few key points of interest occur, one being a psychological evaluation, which claims that he was not suffering from any condition that could have impaired his judgment to the point where he would have been unable to recognize that his brother was in serious trouble. The doctor reports that Paul was always going to bully his brother in some way or another, independent of his mother's presence in his life, and in some respects, he is predisposed to be a bully. He believes Paul has antisocial personality disorder and is likely a sociopath. Paul would adamantly deny to the doctor that he was being manipulated by his mother, and he admits that he enjoyed having power and control over his brother whilst Timothy was being punished. Furthermore, he denies having any fear from disobeying his mother's orders. There are statements from his sisters, who would talk about what life was like growing up in Oklahoma with a household that included Timothy and Paul. His sisters would say that Paul is the biggest bully they've ever met in their life, and that he found genuine joy in tormenting Tim whenever he could. According to them, apparently, he was going to be diagnosed as a psychopath, but medical experts did not do so due to him being underage. He was meant to get another evaluation after he turned 18, but never did.
But I'd ask the court to consider, I think there's 5 fronts on which Paul should be evaluated very differently than where his mother is. And the first is just capacity to understand. We heard Ms. Vander Ark's attorney argue they didn't know what they were doing. They didn't realize that it could kill him or cause that level of injury. And I don't have to come to a conclusion. I don't have to say I think that's right or that's wrong to understand that a 41-year-old law school graduate who was, by her own boasting, at the top of her class, and who worked for the court both from a legal front, from a moral front, from an intellectual front, had far, far more capacity to understand what she was doing and the potential consequences of what she was doing than her son, who was a 20-year-old high school graduate who worked as a dishwasher. But what is very clear from those text messages is there is not a single time that Paul gives an instruction. Every single time an instruction is given, you need to do this, it is given by her.
What reasons could justify my actions? I could make up 1,000 and never believe one. What words could voice my regrets? I can think of millions, yet never feel it's enough. If I could do it all again and do it right, I would. I feel I will pay for my choices and yet never feel better because he's still gone. I have had time to think during my time in Muskegon County Jail, and I've realized many things about myself that I might never have considered otherwise. My problems and flaws, to put it simply, are the place to begin correction of self. I ask the judge for nothing more than mercy and fairness, to offer me compassion so I might learn from him. I only hope to better myself in the coming days and serve my time with what little honor I have left, and to make right my faults in search of a better tomorrow.
In one of the interviews, Mr. Ferguson indicated that he liked getting praised by Shanda and admitted he liked having control over Timothy. He reportedly admitted having power over somebody feels good. The report also mentions cruelty to animals, stealing, abuse. His mother at the time, back in 2018, told staff at the clinic he's become bossy, telling his siblings what to do. For Mr. Ferguson's part, reportedly, when commenting about his being irritable, he admits that this is due to his younger siblings not listening. He gets physically aggressive towards his younger siblings. He also tried to lock his younger brother, i.e. apparently a reference to the decedent, in the closet because his brother wouldn't listen to him. So the court read this and certainly looks at this as someone who is predisposed, I think was the ultimate conclusion, predisposed to abuse his brother. Specifically, the victim in this case, in a history of doing that. Now, I have no doubt in my mind that And Mr. Ferguson is a result of years and years and years of physical neglect and abuse on behalf of his mother. No doubt in my mind that's borne out in this report. But the court is asked to essentially ignore the decisions or his behavior because of that, and to somehow say that we're going to minimize the damage and what he did in this case because of that. If the court started imposing that standard, I think we would be in real trouble, because every defendant that comes before this court has a horrible history, I would say. That's the reason they're here. People that have supportive parents and things go good for them typically don't come here. Now, that's not always the case. Believe me, there's a lot of interventions. Mr. Ferguson is trying to shift blame from his mother, from him to his mother, to say that somehow, well, if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have done this, or she's the one that did this. What that tells me is that this has been a careful, manipulated story by Mr. Ferguson from the very beginning of this thing, that he's going to put the blame on his mom. I'm going to be manipulated. I have Asperger's syndrome. I have autism. I have Stockholm syndrome. There's mention of him saying, well, maybe I have Stockholm syndrome in here. No, this is an individual. What the truth of this is that we have two individuals that lack empathy, who lack emotion, and both of them, the triggering factor in this report, the triggering factor that caused this abuse was the removal of the husband, of stepdad. Once he was gone, these two individuals were free to torture somebody, and they did it. That's what they did. And I think Ms. Vander Ark did use Mr. Ferguson. I think that she knew from his history that he was predisposed to torment Timothy. I think that she knew that he would have no problem doing that. And Mr. Ferguson walked through that door and was happy to be the enforcer. Was happy to do it, and continued to torture his brother over and over and over and over until he was a shell of a person, until he was dead, died from starvation. The court is concerned that Mr. Ferguson will not get the help he needs in prison. I think he's one step away from becoming a psychopath like his mother. And the court is concerned that he represents a danger to the public. That if released, he would represent a significant danger to the public. Mr. Ferguson, I think you are a product of your environment, but I don't believe you that you're sorry. I don't. I don't think you have empathy. I don't think you have any emotion whatsoever. And that's what scares the court. It really scares me. I think you're sorry that you're here. I think you're sorry you got caught. I don't think you wanted Tim to die either, like your mother, because you would get caught and you wouldn't torture him anymore. And believe me, I've tried to sit here and try to think, well, maybe Mr. Ferguson's not as bad as Mom. I think you're just as bad, if not worse. If not worse. This is where we're at. So, based on all that, the sentence of the court, you serve 30 years to 100 years in Michigan Department of Corrections. Credit for 592 days you've already served. Court's going to assess a $68 state cost, $130 crime victim rate assessment.
In the lead up to Shanda's sentencing, there would be a few more interviews conducted with people from her life. From Gabriel, the 7-year-old boy who lived with the family at the time of Timothy's death. Gabriel would say, his brother Tim is a bad boy and only allowed to eat bread, wet bread, hot sauce, or hot sauce on bread. Tim gets into trouble for getting food and water and for talking to him. When Tim is in trouble, he goes to timeout, where he is given some water, but Mama makes Tim dump most of the water out. Gabriel shows the pose Tim must do in the small room for punishment, standing against the wall with hands behind his head. He says that Tim is no longer allowed to sleep in his bed and must sleep in the small room. Gabriel would start talking about his brother's death and said that he believes some of the punishments killed him, but he then stops talking and says he's not supposed to talk about the bad thing with Tim. He did not want to talk about Tim anymore after this. An interview with Shanda's biological sister, Paige. She would talk about the physical abuse that both she and Shanda suffered as children, initially by their biological father, then stepfather, and the foster parents that followed. They would be punished in ways that saw them endure ice baths and food restrictions, on top of being beaten with various items. When their mother passed away, Shanda would begin to have a sexual relationship with their stepfather, and he put her on birth control. She recalls her sister being controlling and describes her as possibly a sociopath. Paige recalls when she was pregnant and 16 weeks along, Shanda was upset that her sister had become pregnant before she did, so she struck Paige in the stomach and caused her to miscarry the child. Then, when Paige was pregnant again with her second child, Shanda would attack her once more, but this time, Paige's husband intervened before any significant damage could be inflicted. She stopped communicating with her sister in the year 2000. An interview with one of Shanda's work colleagues would reveal that Shanda was apparently never doing her work when she was supposed to, especially during court. She was instead sitting on her phone or laptop and doing personal business, which mostly involved observing the cameras from her house. She even at times was overheard yelling at her children through the phone whenever they left their rooms. An acquaintance of Shanda who studied with her in law school would say that she was a bully and would frequently harass others. As a result of her behavior, she was declined a role as student mentor due to her negative attitude towards her peers. This now leads us into the sentencing hearing for Shanda.
You know, Mr. Johnson makes the same argument today that he made at the trial, that this was just negligence. This was her not understanding what was going on. She was really trying to do the punishment. She was trying to be a good parent, and she just didn't realize that Timothy was in such a horrible condition. And I found myself, especially during the closing argument, quite frankly, finding myself almost believing that. And afterwards, after the trial, I sat in my car after leaving that day, trying to understand, why I could feel that way. And what I realized is that I wanted to feel that way because I didn't want to accept the reality of the situation here. And the reality of the situation here is that this person, Ms. Vander Ark, you intentionally engaged in these acts. This wasn't negligence. This is not understanding why, but you intentionally did this with a goal. And I think Mr. Johnson's correct. I don't believe there was an intent to kill here, because you would have lost the very thing that you wanted to torture. Without him, you have no one to torture, except maybe the younger children. So I don't believe you intended to kill him. I think you intended to continue on torturing him for as long as you possibly could. The why, I don't know. But all the information that I have in front of me, and I sat down, I really thought about this, and I looked over my notes from the trial, demonstrate that this wasn't negligence. This wasn't you not understanding what was going on. You look through, I read through every single text message of the exhibit, 2,000 plus pages, to try to understand what the heck was going through your mind. And what became entirely clear to me is that you knew exactly what you were doing. Immediately afterwards, when police arrive at the home, you immediately concoct this lie about he's been on a hunger strike. He was in the bed and I checked on him and I gave him some food and all this stuff. You got Paul involved in it. At one point in time, put baggy clothes on him. Put clothes on him to make sure, I guess, that he looks like he was actually wearing them, that he was hiding his his poor condition, even though you already received text messages, weeks earlier of how bad he looked. You testified yourself how highly intelligent you were. In fact, that's the only thing that you testified to that I think was actually true. You were quite proud of that, boasting how intelligent you were. And not only that, but your actions in hiding this child. You hid him from his grandparents. You made sure that your other son, G, or little man as you call him, didn't see him. Those text messages talk about not wanting anyone to see him. I want to see him in that condition. You made sure that the garage was closed. When you sent him out there with no pants on to clean out the garage. I'm a father myself. I love my kids. I love them with unconditionally. But quite frankly, there's a mother's love that I've seen that is striking. And anybody who's a parent who's married, most mothers, not all, but most mothers have such a strong love for their children. And to see what you did to your own child, I don't know if there's a word in the English language to describe how to describe it. I only can come up with just horrific. You intentionally and systematically tortured this child. And let's call it what it is. It's torture. You tortured this child. This wasn't punishment. This wasn't trying to curb his behavior. You tortured him. Bread with hot sauce, wall sits, up and down the stairs, sleep deprivation, ice baths, making him puke up food, monitoring his bathroom time, giving him 60 seconds in the bathroom if he went to urinated, or 5 minutes if he had a bowel movement. You made him sleep in the closet. You threatened to make him sleep in the garage. You put Tabasco directly in his mouth. You made him put his hands over the head. Made him work in the garage with no pants. And there's two other things that didn't come out in the trial that were in the messages. One, that there was talk of blindfolding him, depriving him of his physical sight as a punishment. And the last thing that struck me is just absolutely horrific in terms of your thinking. There was mentioning of giving him salt water as a punishment. One of the text messages talks about, hey, tell Paul or tell Tim that I'm not going to do the salt water punishment. And your reasoning for not punishing him was that, oh my God, we can't get him salt water, that could hurt him, that could kill him. But it was because you didn't want to give him another excuse to sit down on the toilet because he'd have diarrhea. He'd have diarrhea, and so he would have an excuse to sit down for a few more minutes while he was diarrhea from salt water. That was your excuse. That was your justification, not that it would hurt him. And you did so for what? Because of some punishment. You wanted to regulate his food, even though you yourself testified that he didn't really gain a lot of weight. Toward the end of these text messages, you and Paul are talking about not wanting him to win. He's not going to win. I didn't allow pictures to be shown in open court of Timothy as he was when he died, because I didn't want people to remember him like that. Of all the things you took away from him, one thing I didn't want you to take away from him was at least some shred of dignity. And then I also thought, well, I'm a judge, I'm a human being. I don't know how to right this wrong. We try to do that. I try to do that from the bench every day. There's no way to right this wrong except impose a sentence that essentially takes away your freedom. And I thought to myself, what do I do? And I will tell you this. I'm choosing not to remember your son dead, looking like a Holocaust victim, but I'm choosing to remember like that. And you can't even look at him. That's how he was. A beautiful child with a lot of life in his eyes. That's who your son was. And you took that from him. I'm choosing to remember him as a happy individual with life, not as an individual. And that's the picture I want people to remember of your son. You took that from him. You took it from him. For what reason, I don't know. Mr. Johnson's right. There is something broken in you. I don't know what that is, but it doesn't negate what you did here. So, besides remembering him like that, I'm not going to let you hide in the darkness anymore. People know what you are now. They know what you did. You're not able to hide in the darkness anymore. Timothy won. And he won because we know what you did to him now. It's not hidden anymore. We know who you are. That's the way that I'm going to honor him. You don't win because justice, thank God, in this case prevailed. I can't even imagine if you had been able to resuscitate him. He'd be still suffering. So if there's anything I'm grateful for, would be that he finally passed away so you couldn't continue to torture him like you did. It's a sentence of the court. First as to count 2, child abuse in the first degree. Court sentences you 50 years to 100 years in prison. Credit for 575 days. Court is exceeding guidelines in this case. As to count 1, felony murder. It's a sentence of the court. You serve a term within the Michigan Department of Corrections for the rest of your natural life without parole. Again, there's credit for 575 days that you've already served.
It's at this point in the video where I've moved away from presenting the facts of the case and now speak my own thoughts. And boy, do I have a lot for this one. But before I dive into them properly, I want to highlight something about the trial which doesn't relate to Timothy or the horrible situation overall. A pleasant thing to witness. During trial, there was a lot of respect that the opposing attorneys held for one another.
One of the, when Mr. Roberts was given his open, and quite frankly, I've been doing this for 35 years. That's one of the finest openings I've ever heard. It was just wonderful. It was those kinds of things that lawyers appreciate because it was so well crafted and so well delivered. And he even gave you some poetry, and I'm no poet. I can't match that. I look for stuff, but I can't find anything like he did. It was just a wonderful opening.
When I was in college, I discovered a musical group called 10,000 Maniacs. Their 1987 album, In My Tribe, begins with a song called What's the Matter Here? It's a very powerful, very moving song. Natalie Merchant is the lead singer for the group and wrote the song. And the song is about her being a person who's witnessing what she believes to be child abuse, the physical abuse of a child in the building she lives in. The bridge of the song, after she hears threats made to the child by the father, has these lyrics. Answer me and take your time. What could be the awful crime? He could do at so young an age. If I'm the only witness to your madness, offer me some words to balance out what I see and what I hear. These cold and lowly things that you do, I suppose you do because he belongs to you. And instead of love, you've given him these cuts and sores that don't heal with time or with age.
What I got for you is a little bit of physics. 20 years ago, 30 maybe, I read that the smallest bit of matter theoretically possible to exist in the universe would be about 2/100,000th of a billionth of a millimeter. And it would be a thing. It'd be two-dimensional. It'd be a thing that's so high energy that it could only exist for a brief moment in time. It comes, it exists, and it pops out of this existence.
And I want to start by thanking Mr. Johnson for his compliments here. We tried a number of cases together over the years, and it's always, quite frankly, it's always a pleasure to work with Mr. Johnson. And I think a lot of folks are probably confused sometimes when they see a relationship, a good relationship between both sides. And what I always tell people is this is an adversarial system by its nature, but that doesn't mean that the parties necessarily have to be adversaries. We don't have to agree on everything, And ultimately, that's why you folks are here.
The physicist and the poet. It's refreshing to witness, seeing as so many trials I work on, there's a level of animosity that seems to be burning between both sides. Potentially it's all an act, or it could be real. I imagine a bit of both comes into play in various cases. But here, both sides treated each other with great respect when objecting, arguing, and presenting their sides. It made me feel quite fond of both attorneys. And if I found another case where either of these men were participating, I'd be excited to see more of their work. Diving into my thoughts on the case now, sometimes a human comes along that blows me away with how different their mind may work. Sometimes I'm in awe of the beauty which comes from the different ways to think and process information. But here, I'm shocked at the despicable nature of Shanda and Paul's minds. Whilst working on this video, I was brought back to a memory from my childhood. Growing up, one day I learned that the neighbors owned a beautiful little duckling. I would often climb up on the fence and watch it running around their yard. Eventually, I learned that the reason they had this duckling was to kill it and eat it when it got old enough. When I learned that this was her fate, I became very upset. I jumped the fence and kidnapped her, then brought her to my room. I kept it a secret for probably less than a few hours before my mother found out and made me give her back to the neighbor. I was devastated. The neighbor saw how upset I was and allowed me to keep her as my pet. I loved this duckling so much. It slept with me in my bed and it followed me around. In my little child's mind, I never thought a bond like this with an animal was possible. When other people would call this duck, she wouldn't answer. But as soon as I got home from school and called her name, she would come running. She would excitedly circle around me and then follow me for the entire afternoon until we went to bed. I had her for about 4 years, until one day I got home from school and she wouldn't come to me. I found her body torn up and bloodied. Our dog, a Labrador that was rescued from another neighbor a few months earlier, had attacked her and left her to die. When I found her, she was still alive, but barely. I cleaned the blood off and held her as we went to the vet. My heart broke as the vet told me there's nothing they could do to save her, and the most humane thing would be to put her down. So I watched the needle go in, and the life slip from her eyes as she stared at me, confused and afraid. The days and weeks following, an anger boiled in me unlike any I've experienced to this day. I hated that dog with everything I had. I refused to look at it. I refused to go outside. And as time passed, and the pain of her loss softened, my hatred toward this dog wouldn't go away. I never attacked it or made its life uncomfortable, but I refused to engage with it. I refused to give it any sign that I cared. At times it would be my chore to feed him. His name was Charlie, by the way, and I remember thinking to myself, I'm not gonna feed stupid Charlie. Why doesn't he just go out and find another duck to kill and eat? I would sit in my room, knowing that the dog was outside and hungry, and as the hours passed, this piece of me inside had begun to ping. I felt bad that it was hungry. I still didn't want to feed it, but the reality set in. Charlie didn't understand what he did. He didn't understand why I hated him or the pain that he caused. So each time where I was determined to let him go hungry for a night, I would only last a few hours before I ended up dragging myself outside and giving him his food. When reviewing this case and working on this video, I thought about that story a lot. I thought about that feeling a lot. How I couldn't starve a dog that I hated with every ounce of my being for only a few hours. Shanda starved her 15-year-old son, someone who she knew very well to have a mind that operated differently than what is classed as typical, and she starved him, tortured him. I can't wrap my head around it. I've tried and tried, but I keep coming up empty. This woman is horrific. Timothy wasn't some prisoner of war who was captured by enemies that hate his country. This isn't a psychopath who found a random person on the street and decided to lock them away as their plaything. Someone who they have no emotional tie to. This is her child, come on. I have friends who have, in my opinion, some pretty horrific parents. And even they would look at this situation and think, now that's an evil mother. I just can't understand it, frankly. I feel sickened by her actions. Through trying to understand it all, I had these thoughts. Okay, maybe she hadn't seen him for 13 or so years after losing custody, and when he re-entered her life, he's practically a stranger. And so all of the pressures of her husband's stroke that amplified her own issues, it made that abused little girl who exists within her come out in a truly sadistic fit of rage. But even then, even with that train of thought, there's still so much I don't understand about it. So many more questions I have, and holes that I can poke into that theory. And it was at that point that I realized what I was doing. I desperately didn't want to believe she's evil. You can call me naive, or possibly blissfully ignorant and aware of it, but I hate to think about the level of depravity that exists within some people. I'm in the wrong line of work for that, hey? But it's easier for me to exist with ignorance to the horrors of the world, rather than face them. I select the evil that I choose to look at in my own time and in my own way. This particular case, it caught me right off guard. I read the description of it before starting. I obtained court documents and went over the details. And I thought to myself, this seems like a case I'd like to cover. What I wasn't prepared for were the 6 months of text messages. And I'll get into why that affected me in a little. For now, what I'll say is this video did make me look at people differently. The conclusion I had to face was that she is one of those people that is a sadistic horror upon the world. A kind of beast that I do know exists. And now I've seen how it thinks through her text messages. She's a sadistic torturer that was living in hiding until Timothy came along. The level of depravity that her mind could sink to was somewhat hibernating before he arrived on her doorstep. Her mind had been kept on a leash by the gatekeeper which was her husband. Then when he left the picture, the pressures of life cracked that thing's cage wide open. She was looking after 3 boys, 2 of them with high support needs. She was trying to hold down a difficult job, trying to maintain a household on minimum income. Something had to give, and it did. She succumbed to her sadistic tendencies, inflicting torture that was once inflicted upon her. This boy was punished so severely that he couldn't even be punished correctly. So many of her punishments were the result of prior punishments not being taken in the way she demanded. Punishment for the crime of being punished, which resulted in a deepening of her resentment toward him, and thus upping the intensity of the punishments. I truly do believe she hated this child. I really do. It's a hard pill to swallow, right? Mothers are meant to love their children, but it's out there, and this is what it looks like. I've heard of people who construct situations like this in many different ways. Prison guards that get enjoyment out of tormenting and targeting one particular inmate. Teachers who hone in and can't stand one student for whatever reason. Supervisors at work that continuously pick on one of their workers. This is what I see happening here. A mother who is under enormous pressure, and this one problem child is causing issues. She focuses on him, starts out slow, punishments here and there. It doesn't work. The child gets worse, so the punishments intensify. It happens slowly, so she crosses the line into the realm of becoming a monster, and doesn't fully realize it. At least I hope she doesn't. I mean, maybe she did. I actually wouldn't be surprised if she did. But she convinces herself that he deserves it, that he's challenging her directly in a way that she is capable of challenging others. She enters a psychological competition with the child, a competition that he has no clue that he's a part of. He's just trying to survive day to day, but to her, he's trying to dominate her, and her sadistic mind can't have that. After crossing the line, she wakes to find herself torturing this kid and thinking that he can handle it. And so it keeps stepping up in an attempt to get him to submit to her commands. Commands that no longer make any sense and are impossible to follow. This whole case is a deep dive into a sort of hell, a madness that I wanted to believe only exists locked away in some remote, distant torture cell of the far reaches of the world. The insanity that surrounds it is astonishing. She was like a runaway train with no brakes, and the driver long ago abandoned the passengers to their fate. Reading her thoughts as she suffered from a lack of sleep due to punishing Tim all night resembles proper madness, a madness that everyone around was dragged into. The days after all-night punishments would see punishment resume and continue into the next night, as she would hurt Timothy for keeping them awake the night before. So let's dive into that for a moment. The child is exhausted and suffering from probably 40 plus hours of no sleep, being forced to stand or worse. While sitting in an ice bath, he's nodding off, placing his head on his shoulder or on the lip of the tub to fall asleep, taking moments where he's not being watched to readjust and get more comfortable, if that's even possible. And because of this, he must stay up the following night to do what he couldn't already do properly, according to her, the night before. And through this, Shanda feels more and more livid that he's doing this to purposely torment her. I feel like I'm looking directly into the eye of insanity. I've worked on a lot of cases now where the perpetrator acts from a position of difficult to understand evil, but I think this one is the most raw glimpse into it that I've ever seen. I say this because usually we get a criminal who does something horrible, and at most, we might get a psychological evaluation of what they might have gone through to lead them to this, or in some cases, they take the stand and testify in their own defense, giving me a small window into what goes on behind the scenes. But here, the difference in this case is, and why I suspect this one has hit harder than usual, is due to the hundreds of pages of back and forth text messages. The defense lawyer would say that reading a text exchange doesn't give us the full picture, and I couldn't agree more, but I don't think I'm viewing it in the way that he intended. Reading through the texts is like looking directly into hell for a period of 6 months. I, and anyone else who dares navigate those texts, can gain an intimate and extended glimpse of what's under the hood of the monster's vehicle, a sneak peek unlike any other case I've worked on. I only read to you during the video the texts that violently break through the ice and depict the excruciating horror that was inflicted, but to the rest, it's a day-to-day back and forth that reveals an entire ecosystem of struggle and intensity. For example, look at these messages sent to Paul, which show just how demanding, controlling, and manipulative Shanda could be as she observed him from her cameras. Why did you choose to ignore me? Response please. We'll talk when I get home. We are also going to talk about you doing videos when I'm not there, because that's not watching the others by any means. Time to get up please. Are you up? Did you seriously go back to sleep? And remember, Timothy's camera is recording, so if he manages to fall asleep because of you not catching something, that's not going to end well for either one of you. Love you. Sorry he's being so difficult. He keeps trying to lay down, and I can't keep doing this. Please go ahead and wake up, and watch him on his bedroom camera for now. I realize that you don't have the right app for the bathroom camera yet, so don't swap those two cameras until you are ready to leave for work, please. I'm really sorry again. I love you. To add on to these, at one point, Paul bought a new MacBook, and he wasn't even allowed to set it up without her being there. She controls everything about his life, from the time he's supposed to wake up, to what he's allowed to do on his phone before he goes to bed, to whether he's allowed to purchase snacks using his own money after work, how much money he must give her in general. She's constantly ordering Ubers and rides so that he can get to work. It's pretty nasty to watch it all play out. Furthermore, this text in particular I want to focus on. It's sent about 5 days before Timothy dies. Do me a favor, and go ahead and fix him a cup of rice. Instead of using water, use mostly chicken broth. There is some broth in the fridge. Try to get all the way up to the cup with broth. And then if you need a little bit more than a cup of liquid, just be safe. Use water. But don't tell him we did that. It's a few extra calories. She is fully aware that Timothy is not doing well and acknowledges that she has to do something about this. So, to bolster his nutritional intake, instead of using water for the rice, she advises Paul use chicken broth instead. The part of interest to me is how she does not want Paul to disclose to Timothy that they are going to do this. I interpret this as her not wanting the child to know that he's being cared for. He's meant to be punished, and she resents him for having to care for his nutritional needs. So instead of him knowing that he is going to receive something that's slightly nicer than usual, she wants to keep him in the dark regarding that information. If he were to know that he's being somewhat taken care of, that means he would be winning. His descent into malnutrition is working. He's winning this battle, and she's having to back down. She is having to buckle and admit defeat. And she can't have that at all. Keep the child alive, but don't let him know that we know his purposeful loss of weight is working to make us worry. It's absolutely disgusting. In other cases where I've worked on monsters, Donald Smith and Granville Ritchie come to mind. We don't have the hundreds of texts showing us how their mind works. We're shielded from the horror of how that sort of mind can look. In the tragically painful Waffle House story, where we do have countless hours of footage and personal blogs to review, I don't see evil in that one, but tragedy, as a man's sanity slips from him and he succumbs to paranoia. But here, I see a sadist who has chosen a target for her abuse and uses that abuse to feel like she has some form of control over her life, control which is increasingly slipping from her. As I look through the window provided by texts, there's not one single moment where she praises Timothy, expresses how sorry she is that she has to do these punishments, expresses confusion as to why her beautiful son is having so much trouble following simple rules. It's just horror upon horror. Then, to add another layer of feral mind play, I haven't even gotten started on what I think of Paul yet. Some will say that he's a puppet, an easy to control, easy to manipulate person that got caught up in her evil scheme. Others will say that he's worse than Shanda, another sadistic torturer. If reports from people that knew him and grew up with him are to be believed, a picture is painted that he enjoyed torturing Timothy long before they moved in with Shanda. There's sexual abuse, emotional abuse, physical. The man is a menace in his own right. What do I think of him though? Usually, I would say something like this. The answer lies somewhere in the middle, but I'd actually say the opposite here. I think the answer lies in the extreme ends of both sides. He's a despicable human and an easy to manipulate, desperate needer of attention and approval. Paul is a self-confessed people pleaser who is desperate for the approval of someone he deemed superior to him. I fully believe that to be the truth. But that, along with his history of abuse, animal cruelty and so on, I think that it's no excuse for what he did. He wasn't brainwashed or manipulated. His mum came along and cared for him in the way he wanted, so he wanted to please her. When she required his help with punishments, he was practically given permission to abuse Timothy in a way that satisfied him. And the better a job he did punishing Tim, the more pleased his mother was, fulfilling this sick cycle of pleasing and abuse. This is apparent, especially in the earlier months of the text history, where Shanda wasn't at this point really too intense regarding how bad Timothy's behavior is. Paul can be seen starting messages off, telling her how awful Tim has been during the day, how angry he is with Tim, how Tim is trying to take advantage of him again. Paul's trying to stoke the flames of anger and resentment within his mother so that she can allow him to do what he does best, abuse his brother and receive praise for that. What a perfectly horrific storm. Mix someone like Paul with someone like Shanda. Throw in enormous family pressures that could make home life difficult for the most stable individuals. Then add a high support needs child who doesn't understand why he can't do things. And here we have a recipe for disaster. To further add to my contempt towards Paul, compliments again to the YouTuber Zavgirl for compiling all of this. There are hours upon hours of jail calls from Paul to various individuals that really give an insight into how his mind is working. I'm not going to go through any of it here, but if you're interested, jump over to her channel and check it out. The most notable of these surrounds a situation where a woman by the name of Jenny has taken a liking to Paul after discovering him following his arrest. She professes her love for him, adoration, and eventually the two plan to get married. Through these calls, in my opinion, one can see the mask slip from Paul. Over time, as he becomes more confident with Jenny, one can see him reveal what his personality is like. A complaining, egotistical bully that doesn't feel as though he deserves what is happening to him. There's 3 more things that I want to point out. The first being Shanda's apparent loss of memory regarding all of her text messages. She is incredibly firm regarding her story that she can't remember many of these texts. Yet, there's not only texts she can't remember, but countless other things like baseball games. Over a 6-month period, she claims to have this big chunk of memory missing. In her same defense, she would have us believe that when she sent a message along the lines of, "Pour hot sauce on my son's genitals," she acknowledges that she indeed sent that during one of these moments of memory loss, or disassociation, if one takes her word for it. She confirms that while disassociated, she doesn't know where the idea came from to pour hot sauce on genitals. She can't imagine sending that, can't imagine ever having that sort of thought. She's repulsed by her own words. Here we see, in the cross-examination, where she expresses this inner conflict, she will firmly deny allegations regarding ice baths and the ice that she used in them. She says that she never stored ice for later use, due to the ice maker only being able to create a negligible amount of cubes. And she doesn't remember mentioning that until the text message is actually shown to her.
You wouldn't make any more ice and put it away and store it up so we could have extra for the next day, would you?
Not that I remember ever doing, no.
Okay. Page 5823.
Let him know that if he tries to sleep at all, he'll get another ice bath sometime before you leave for work and another when I get home. And I said, might want to toss the ice that is made into some Ziploc bags in the freezer tomorrow for if we need a bunch more.
You want to change your earlier answer?
No, because we never did it.
So she stood her ground and so confidently stated she wasn't aware ice was ever stored for later use. Yet we all heard the text by her very own words where she tells Paul to store ice for later use. So how can she claim that that never happened? Why must the jury believe that if she can't comprehend her own words in certain messages that were sent while experiencing a state of disassociation, why is it so hard to believe that she could have done other things that shock and confuse her as well? How can she so confidently claim that certain things didn't happen when in the same defense, she says that she can't believe certain things happened? Then to take it a step further, maybe all of these things that she's denying, the torture that she says never happened because she wouldn't do that, the baths weren't that cold, there was not that much hot sauce used, they only made him wall sit once for a few minutes. Why are we not to believe that all of this, and worse, did indeed happen in one of her states of memory loss? The same state that saw her maliciously wonder what hot sauce on her son's genitals would feel like for him, how miserable it would make him. It's stupidity of the highest order. Did she not consider this? Frankly, I'm astounded that such a dim-witted argument came from a woman who's not only supposedly intelligent beyond belief, but works directly in the field of law. Who knows, hey? Maybe all of her intelligence should be attributed to some other entity, another form of her psyche that exists when she feels pressure. I can imagine that bar exam she passed with flying colors was pretty high pressure, so maybe the intelligent demon took over then and passed the exam for her, and now that its job is done, the horrible child Timothy is no more. The demon has abandoned poor dim-witted Shanda to fend for herself amongst this pride of legal lions, and here on the stand we see her true form, an imbecile, fumbling her way through inconsistency after inconsistency. The second detail that shocked me was how she claims that due to wanting to give her 15-year-old son privacy, she wouldn't bathe him and left that duty to Paul, the same man that has a number of sexual abuse allegations against him regarding his conduct with Timothy. That sounds about right, hey? Leave the sexual abuser in charge of bathing a nude, high support needs child that he's already accused of molesting. Who knows? Maybe her memory of those allegations against Paul are lost amongst the countless other memories that seem to have vanished along the way. But I think not, because in this message right here, she states that she is going to let Paul do whatever he wants to Timothy, as threatening him with this sure seems to motivate him, in her words. And the final detail that I'll bring up. Timothy had a subdural hematoma, which was discovered during autopsy. These sort of injuries aren't from a small bump on the head. They usually occur when a significant impact strikes that person, causing the lining around their brain to rupture. I find it curious that when she first spoke to police, she made it apparent over and over that Timothy fell out of the bunk and hit his head. It seems to me that either she or Paul struck the child with a mighty blow to the head, and now she's trying to cover up how that injury could have occurred. I'm gonna leave it there regarding these two, but make no mistake, I have much more I could say on them. For example, there's a situation where Shanda's mother was actually accused of plotting to murder her mother so that she could gain her wealth. It's like psychopathic behavior runs in the family, hey? Anyway, I despise them and any other people that may exist out there who have done or are currently doing the same thing to some other poor person right now. I know many people survive this sort of abuse. They grow to an age where they can escape their abuser, and then they're sent hurtling into a difficult and confusing world. A world where many people who have had loving childhoods can struggle in. If anyone listening right now has survived such torment or anything similar, I know it's not much at all coming from some random man who makes internet videos, but I'm grateful you survived and are doing your best. Keep going and make sure you succeed. Don't let these disgusting people win, even if success simply means surviving another day. Thinking about Timothy now, the horror he endured, I can't begin to comprehend it. Locked away, his final moments of life must have been a confusing blur of agony, both physically and mentally. He must have felt abandoned, terrified, exhausted. He spent his entire life feeling like a burden to those who were meant to love him, and he slipped away with not a single soul around him who could have shown him love. Death was his only way out, and those words make my spine tingle. I can go over detail after detail about what a gem this boy was. Difficult to raise maybe, but intelligent, caring and sweet. His interest in breaking things apart, and an interest in trains. Maybe he could have become a mechanic or an engineer. Maybe if he survived this, he could have explored his caring nature and helped other people that faced similar challenges that he did. He was deeply empathetic. His teachers adored him. He had a sense of humor. He would assist others around him when he was at school. Timothy would have brought a lot to the world if he survived. I truly believe that. Just like the judge said, nothing can right this wrong, but the best I can do is send the video out into the world and end it on a note that shows anyone who watches who he was, a special and beautiful person.
Millie Joan Ferguson.
All right, you may proceed. Go ahead, Ms. Ferguson.
Thank you. I'm Millie. I'm Timothy's youngest older sister. I'm 2 years older than him. One of my earliest memories I have was being taken away from my parents by CPS. My two older brothers rode in a car ahead of us, and me and Timothy rode together in the second car. And in every picture we have as a family, Timothy was always right by my side. We were the two youngest, the two smallest. We were the two that sat in the middle in the backseat car rides with the too small car. The last two to get hand-me-downs, the two that never had to worry about not getting homework help from an older sibling. He was always 2 years behind me, so every time I got to the next level in school, that's how many years I had to wait for him to follow along. When I was in 8th grade, he was in 6th, and there was a student in my science class that started talking about him, trying to start rumors. I stood up right as class was starting, as people were quieting down, and I shouted at him to never talk about my little brother. People could say whatever they wanted about me, I didn't care, but not about him, and never about him, because I was his big sister. It was my job to protect him. I like to say I don't regret things in my life, that every mistake I've made has made me who I am today, but when Timothy died, I couldn't stop regretting. I regret not hugging him more and teasing him so much instead of telling him that I loved him every once in a while. I regret not putting aside my differences with Shanda and Paul just to check in on him. I regret not dancing with him the last time I saw him at our brother's wedding. These are the things that I can't remedy now. There's no fixing what's been done. no way to redo it all over again, and that's my regret. That I couldn't protect him when he needed me most. Timothy was so smart. He could take anything apart with any tools, or none at all. He had trouble focusing, but when he did, he was just as smart as the rest of his class. He made people angry, yes, but then he would look at you with those big baby blue eyes and you could never stay mad at him. It took me 6 months of therapy after he died to even properly feel the emotions of his death. And I'm still in therapy today. I've been trying so hard since he passed away just to try to let people know of him. Let people know that he was loved, that there are people out there grieving for him. I'm here today for him because I was asked to speak for him, because I was given a victim impact statement for him instead of a witness one, because the victim of this crime can't speak for himself. I knew him his whole life. I held him the day he was born, and I continued to try to hold his hand as long as he was by my side, until he wasn't. I want the woman who killed my little brother to face the highest punishment possible. I want her detained for the rest of her life so she can't hurt anyone else. And I want the world to know that Timothy was wanted, if not by her, then by me. He was loved by me.
I go by Nolan. My full name is Eric Nolan Ferguson, Jr.
Go ahead, Mr. Ferguson.
I am Timothy's oldest brother, and unfortunately the oldest child of Shanda Vander Ark. I live with my wife 900 miles from here, and in July of 2022 I was working 60-hour work weeks trying to build a career when I received a phone call that I never thought I would get. My baby brother Timothy was gone. For 2 days I reeled with no explanation until I was informed that our own mother was in jail for his murder. Somehow, making an entirely unexpected and deeply awful situation worse. I thought that things were different than when I was younger. I thought my mother had changed for the better. Not one day has been easier since then. I've had to leave my career behind. My wife has to watch helplessly as I struggle, day in and day out, wondering how none of us knew what was going on, wondering if I told Tim I loved him enough times for him to remember, up until the very end. I have to wake up every day and pretend that I am who I was before Timothy died. I have to pretend to be Nolan so that my friends and coworkers and family won't worry about me more than they already do. I'm surrounded by people who love me and care about me, but not a single person besides my sisters who understand how hard it is. Timothy wasn't surrounded by people who loved him when he died, and if I had known that, nothing could have stopped me from rescuing him and holding him in my arms and telling him I love him, that his big brother's got him, just like I did the day he was born. But because of Shanda Vander Ark's actions, I instead got to cradle the bag of his ashes in my arms, just like I did the day he was born. In all my life, I only knew one thing that my little brother didn't like. He hated goodbyes. If he had to say goodbye to anyone, he would cry, and he would hold you, and he would say, "Don't go." But now I'm the one crying, but I never got to say goodbye. I will always love Timothy like I always have, and it kills me to think about. But I know he loved even his abuser and killer up until the very end, because unlike me, that's all he was capable of. Love. I, on the contrary, want to stand here and express the anger and hatred that I feel, but if I'm honest, all that's just a mask, a bandage I try to put over the hole in my heart that was reserved for Timothy, but is now just filled with pain and remorse for every hug, high five, and I loved you that I might have missed in the time that I had with my sweet baby brother. So now I turn to the justice system in hopes that in addition to serving the maximum penalty, that there will be no appeals or second chances. If I can't have my brother back, she shouldn't have her freedom back. And lastly, I want everyone to know that to those who knew him, even that wouldn't feel like justice. Because the life of one sweet little blue-eyed boy is not equivalent to that of a murderer.